who is currently on official assignment out of the country. And I stand on the established protocol to welcome all of you to this eLearn Summit 2026, convened under the timely and forward-looking theme, e-learning priorities for African universities. The Association of African Universities remains deeply committed to advancing higher education across the continent through innovation, collaboration, and strategic partnerships. So today's summit reflects that commitment, and it is bringing together policymakers and academic leaders, technology innovators, and practitioners to engage critically with the future of digital learning in Africa. Across our universities here in Africa, e-learning has moved from being a complementary option to a strategic necessity. It has become central to access, quality assurance, inclusion, resilience, and institutional sustainability. Yet, as we embrace digital transformation, we must also confront three important questions. The first one is, how do we design e-learning systems that are fit for African realities? The second, how do we ensure equity, relevance, and quality across diverse institutional and national contexts? And the third, but not the least, is how do we position universities in Africa not merely as users of technology, but as leaders in digital knowledge production? And I believe that these questions make today's discussion particularly significant. And we are privileged to be joined by an outstanding panel of speakers whose expertise span university leadership, education technology, industry, research, and policy. It is my firm belief that your collective insights will help illuminate priority areas such as digital infrastructure, learning management systems, staff capacity development, student success, industry collaboration, and innovation-driven partnerships. At the AAU, we firmly believe that sustainable progress in e-learning cannot be achieved in isolation. It requires deliberate partnerships among universities, governments, the private sector, technology providers, and development partners. It is through such collaboration that African universities can strengthen institutional readiness and build digitally responsive academic ecosystems. Let us therefore envisage an Africa where every student, irrespective of geography or circumstance, has access to quality digital education, where universities are technologically capable, globally connected, and locally relevant, and where graduates are empowered not only to seek employment, but to create value and drive transformation within their communities. In light of this, I encourage all participants to engage openly and constructively at this virtual convening. Let us all move beyond sharing experiences to identifying actionable strategies that can be adapted and scaled across our African institutions of higher learning. And let today's dialogue contribute meaningfully to policy reforms, institutional planning, and partnership developments across the continent. Finally, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I wish to reiterate the Secretary General's appreciation to our co-hosts, partners, speakers, and all of you participants for your commitment to advancing digitally enabled higher education in Africa. Your presence on this platform signifies a shared resolve to shape an inclusive, innovative, and future-ready African university system. On this note, I wish you all a productive and enriching engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ransford Bakwe, for doing this. And he has just delivered the keynote address and opening remarks on behalf of the Secretary General of the Association of African Universities. Thank you very much, Mr. Ransford. So without wasting further time, we're just going to go straight into the first segment of today's program, which is the panel discussion number one. And the subject to be discussed is bridging the digital divide. And we are looking at access, infrastructure, and then equity. So to do this, as the CEO of eLearn Africa LMS, I would read a brief profile of him, and then I'll also read a brief profile of our second panelist, Chief Etinosa Isiosa Iyari. So just bear with me for a few more seconds or minutes whilst I read the profile of Mr. Brook Negusi. So Brook Negusi is a technology entrepreneur and social innovator and the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Technology Officer of eLearn Africa. Born in Ethiopia and educated in Europe and Canada, he has built a career spanning over 15 years in international technology sectors, including telecommunications, satellite communications, media, and social networks. He is a lifelong social entrepreneur committed to expanding access to technology and education, particularly for underserved communities across Africa. His work has focused on delivering learning resources to school children through satellite and internet-based platforms. Through his vision for eLearn Africa, he continues to drive efforts to make world-class, locally relevant educational content accessible across the continent by leveraging technology and digital connectivity. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brook Negusi, our first panelist. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So our second panelist for this session is in the person of Chief Etinosa Isiosa Iyari of EI Consulting Limited. And I will read briefly his profile as well. So Isiosa Iyari is a leadership development expert, CEO of EI Consulting Limited, and a pioneer in adopting global edtech for the African landscape. He specializes in driving institutional transformation through AI-enhanced training and LMS ecosystems that are specifically engineered for the continent's unique challenges. By prioritizing low bandwidth optimization, offline accessibility, and localized data sets, its user ensures that high-level professional development is accessible even in infrastructure-constrained environments. His methodology transforms corporate training from a cost center into a measurable asset using compliance-driven metrics and predictive analytics to gauge real-world learner outcomes. Whether coaching executives or scaling organizational systems, Asusa is renowned for equipping African professionals with future-proof skills through technology that is as resilient and adaptable as the leaders he trains. Ladies and gentlemen, Chief Etinosa Asusa Iyari. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, guys.
Good morning and good afternoon to you as well. So we'll begin the conversation immediately. And so I have some questions. I would jump in between, uh, or I'll be juggling between the two of you whilst asking this. And the objective of this session is to gather um, expert perspectives on the foundational challenges and innovative solutions shaping equitable access to e-learning across African universities. And we are looking at access, we are looking at infrastructure, and then we are looking at equity. So let's begin with access. Let's begin with access. And let me begin with you, Mr. Negusi. So in your experience, what does equitable access to e-learning truly mean in the African context, and where are we falling short?
Okay, great question. If we're talking about equitable access and we're focusing purely on digital, um, just to refine this, are we talking about what works best in designing for smartphones first and not laptop? Uh, are we talking about the delivery of the multi-channel, mobile first, locally supported idea? Because I guess that's the question. Philemon, is that where you want to take the conversation?
So I don't know if you got my question clearly.
That's what I'm trying to refine. My apologies.
Okay, so let me come again with a question. So I was asking, in your experience, what does equitable access to e-learning truly mean in the African context, and where are we falling short?
Wow. Okay. Multiple points, right? So
Okay.
the first one would be content that works on low bandwidth on mobile phones. The second one would be affordable data and device access. My third one would be uh, flexible payments and study options. Um, I would talk about local academic and technical support, accessibility to design for students with disabilities, and that's something that even at eLearn we have not touched yet. And then, the other one is that content that reflects local realities, examples, labor markets. So that would be how I would answer that.
All right. Thank you very much. So let me come to you, Chief Etinosa. With regards to effective strategies for reaching underserved and remote learners who remain outside the reach of most institutions today, what are the best strategies we can adopt?
Wonderful question, my friend. So we do have a number of disenfranchised learners, right? When it comes to equity, you have individuals in these low regions where they don't have bandwidth, low connectivity, they don't even have access to smart devices that their counterparts have. So the most effective approach would be, creating these low bandwidth optimized content that's suitable for these individuals, taking advantage of their local language, making sure that we have alternate delivery methods than using like your traditional laptops. For example, how can we get courses into devices that are not connected to the internet? We can use USBs, for example. So the unique African constraint requires us to actually think outside the box. The solutions that are presented outside of Africa ultimately do not necessarily work. So going back to your question, the most effective way to introduce these contents without sacrificing quality and remaining equitable for the individuals would be, like I said, find a way to introduce this offline, look for cheaper solutions when it comes to devices, see if we can partner with some of the device manufacturers. And there is a public-private dimension to this as well. It's not just one. It's not one thing. It's a plethora of items that need to come together and make this possible.
Okay. All right. That's very interesting to note. So let me just shift you slightly into a bit of infrastructure. Still on you, Chief Etinosa. So do you think that infrastructure within universities have evolved? Okay. I'm asking because lately we see a lot of these structures coming up in universities. So do you think the infrastructure within universities have evolved? If it is so, how have they evolved, and where do we see the most critical gaps remaining? Because universities are deemed to be higher educational institutions who are supposed to be doing better in terms of infrastructure and things of this nature.
Another excellent question. I think we're only getting better, right? Like you mentioned, universities are supposed to be institutions for higher education, the forefront for research and the likes. They should be promoting, broadband access. They should have, data centers introduced into the concept. So I do see a number of universities already, taking that mantle and doing some very interesting things when it comes to leading the way when it comes to using technology, especially for education. So the infrastructure itself, it cannot be somewhat limited to just the universities, and I think that's why I mentioned the whole public-private dimension to this. There are some policy initiatives that need to take place to make sure that as we're breaking these barriers, we're introducing potential opportunities for more investors to come in and make this possible. So it's not just the universities alone, but there's a little bit of government work, there's a little bit of private work, and I think all three combined together, we can definitely make this achievable. But to your point, the universities are actually picking up as we speak.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Let me come back to you, Mr. Negusi. Still on infrastructure, what kinds of infrastructure investments do you believe institutions should prioritize for long-term sustainability rather than short-term fixes? Because one of the major problems when it comes to Africa as a continent is that we have very beautiful policies, but most of the time, these policies are not sustainable. And sometimes they lack the funding, they lack the planning, and at most, you get to see it not go beyond 5 years. So what infrastructure investments do you believe institutions should prioritize for a long-term sustainability?
So I come about it purely from an online learning perspective, right? So, and we've seen a great deal of investments being made for data, but if we're talking about e-learning and developing e-learning content, I think the investment that comes is from the instructional design side, minimizing heavy video dependence, offering audio, text, and downloadable alternatives. So they can design the courses so that they can be downloaded onto the hardware so that they can work on devices versus always relying on the internet. And so most of the time what we find is power is the issue as opposed to internet. The other parts that come to it is really just more investing on technology and reducing the unnecessary reliance on platforms. So really just making asynchronous programs available for downloadable onto hard devices, making sure that we're effectively being trained and also teaching our teachers on how to effectively be effective in low bandwidth environments. But I can tell you the same thing we talked about probably 3 years ago, which is we need to put a bigger infrastructure for telecommunications, for bandwidth, and I come from that world. But no, I think what's actionable is for us to design programs that are asynchronous, easy to download to hardware, and figure out the workarounds as opposed to waiting for our service providers to actually fix things.
All right, thank you. So I'll get into equity based on what you have just shared with us right now. So when it comes to equity, I know it has been mentioned briefly already. In your general view, how are we doing across board on the continent? Still on you, Mr. Negusi, please. Sorry.
I'm an optimist. So as Philemon, I think we're doing great. I think we could do better, but I think we are finally understanding online learning is not going to take away our jobs at universities. It's not being met with that resistance from, even 3 years ago. I also have come to understand that institutional pride is moving away, and people are understanding that let's forget the pride, let's catch up, right? So there seems to be an emergence of catching up, especially when it comes to online learning. Where I'll be critical about it is that your professors want to do it between Senate and Vice Chancellor's office, things take longer. And that is normal, not just in Africa, in Europe and North America, but that's just more of a university mindset is the cautious part. But no, I think, look, I see it all the time. I see schools that I never thought would have functioning LMSs actually functioning, right?
All right. So I guess then it is safe to say that we are making positive strides in terms of equity on the continent.
Oh, 100%.
Anyway,
Yeah, 100%.
great.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So back to you, Chief. What approaches do you think will work best for supporting marginalized and underrepresented student groups in digital learning contexts?
Sure.
Any ideas?
Sure. I think it still boils down to content, right? Making sure that the content reflects the reality on the ground, the cultural diversity, the women in some remote regions where they don't have access to quality education. How do we tap into that specific crowd? So I really do believe it still falls into designing effective content for the intended individuals. You have individuals in low income communities again that don't have access to quality internet, they don't have access to these devices. I've seen individuals using things like WhatsApp, Telegram to actually communicate e-learning related information. So on that front, I think the African continent on its own is actually doing a lot more with a lot less. You know, we're able to disseminate the information using different methods that previously were not used. I mean, I've seen individuals actually taking exams using short codes with USSDs. So I think the unique African challenges require us to think outside the box, and these disenfranchised learners, which sometimes you can call the last mile learners that so far to reach, we can still reach them with technology, using offline access, working with vendors to provide some cheaper alternative to perhaps Android devices, for example, that have low cost of ownership. I think those might be some effective ways to reach this quote unquote last mile learners.
Thank you so much. I like that phrase you said in there, that we are doing a lot more with a lot less, and that just gives me hope that we are doing well as a continent. Anyway, so back into the situation of access. Still with you, Chief. How should institutions be supporting students who face unreliable internet connection or limited bandwidth? I mean, this probably somehow goes with equity as well.
Absolutely. I think the onus is definitely on the institutions to create more accessible technology-based systems. For example, how do you support individuals with learning disabilities or impairments? Do you have content that actually caters to these type of learners? So the institutions as a whole should make some gender, socioeconomic type content as well as contextually aware content. I think the more the institutions are able to drive into these unique use cases and what exactly their learners require, they can start creating personalized learning for these individuals as opposed to a one size fits all, which unfortunately has been the case for so long. You can't expect a fish to climb a tree. So let's try to create content for the right people.
Yeah. Right. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Negusi, in your experience, have you identified any kind of policy framework which you have seen make a tangible difference in improving access to digital learning resources across universities?
So, great question. Lots of experience with
Okay.
creating content with universities. It comes from the leadership. It's not from a committee. It comes from the leadership. If the vice chancellor is convinced that this is the framework that they should move forward with, then things move. If leadership is not convinced, it does not move. I will give a university in Sierra Leone props on this, which is Jala University, right? And they took a very brave step, and throughout the whole process, we saw a university go from zero access to digital content to creating an online MBA. And it came from the vice chancellor, it came from leadership. We saw the same thing with University of Nigeria. When it comes to an online, and when I speak very with complete humility about this. But when we create online content, there's also a way of creating that online content so that's engaging. And you want professors that then there's a competitiveness that goes on with academics that I love, the camaraderie, and to make things better. I have seen probably the best work out of most of African countries. University of Nigeria stands out to me. Um, Rhodes in South Africa, that stands out to me. Nexus in Uganda, right? But obviously Jala, but it comes from leadership. And when I look back at all of them, it comes down to leadership, willing to listen, willing to participate, not blaming, and actually collectively working out any problems, because there are problems when you're building an online degree. And that's, your first year and a half, you're solving problems, right? So no, it comes down to leadership. I think all of us on this call understand a strong vice chancellor makes a world of difference.
Okay, so let me ask this. Since you mentioned in Jala University, have you possibly seen any university, I mean, not necessarily mentioning names, but have you seen any university that has not come up to this level because of leadership issues, or probably just have not done things correctly because of this problem we're just talking about now?
Yeah, so I'll tell you very point blank. Jala University, I would say that the vice chancellor really took this on.
Okay.
With resistance on initially from professors.
Okay.
And I think we have to be candid about it, because it used to be, I think 2 years ago, where people thought online was going to replace them, right? Now we realize, wait, it's another avenue, but at the same time, we have more students than seats, right? And that's continental. So and if people don't have to quit their jobs, and now the professors are, being at least paid for additional work for grading, right? It's an additional revenue source. I think people's eyes are opening up a little bit more from traditional thoughts.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Negusi. So, Chief, let me come back to you. Still on access. Let's talk a little bit about people living with disability. In your perspective, what does genuine inclusion of students with disability in digital learning environment require from institutions? Because we cannot talk about these things and leave out people living with some form of disability.
Absolutely, my friend. And I think that speaks to inclusive design, right? Just making sure that you have these individuals in mind. We do already have these assistive technologies in place already, and this is where technology comes into to show itself in the academic world. Not only should we even limit it to individuals with learning disabilities or assistive technologies, but let's talk about the individuals that have different language requirements. How do we reach out to those type of individuals? Again, technology can help us convert, for example, English into multi-language support. So we can reach out to a wider reach of individuals. Limiting to just English alone, it does not make it work. I think one of my staff is running a research on how using local language translates to better comprehension of the information being provided to you. And the more we see this, the more it tells us that we need to start personalizing this stuff. We cannot just, create a content that you just clicking and you're done with, but something that's actually you have something you take away with that actually adds value, and we're reaching you. It's not like you're just hearing voices. There's a famous saying that nowadays we hear echoes, we don't hear our own voices. So I think with technology, we can create these type of content that are specific and unique to these individuals that have these specific needs.
All right, thank you so much. I'll shift into a bit of infrastructure, still on you, Chief. I wanted to talk about some challenges here. So still on your experiences, what are the most persistent challenges affecting, or you think challenge, the reliability and scalability of digital learning platforms across higher education institutions?
Sure. You cannot talk without speaking of the campus network infrastructure, how mature the campus is, the IC department, what type of cloud architecture they have. Are they using any type of containerized solutions to ensure scalability? Do they have any type of infrastructure partnership with the local telcos, for example? Do they have any type of capacity planning or building initiatives? Do they have any type of forward-thinking roadmap? Where does the university see itself, for example, in the next 3 years? How much are they investing into the infrastructure itself? I think as we speak, most universities already have some level of network infrastructure, I should say. A number of universities actually manage their own learning management systems, from my experience as well, due to the recent data policy and data privacy related issues. I see a lot of African universities opting out and domiciling their own data locally. So I think it's more of a future proof method to make sure that there is a roadmap in place to actually reach that promised land. But it's on the universities and perhaps it's on us to actually help spell out what that looks like.
Mm, mm. All right, thank you so much. All right, so Mr. Brook, earlier, when you were doing your submissions, you had mentioned other things in relation to other aside institutions like government and other private stakeholders, coming into support. So based on your observations, what role should the partnerships with telecommunication companies and governments play in strengthening infrastructure, and how can universities maximize these partnerships?
So I think when it comes to telecommunications and universities, the first thing that they should be looking at, and I think that's one of the things that we're working towards in a couple markets, is it's a great pool for them to pull students from.
Hmm.
So and creating some type of partnership between banks, insurance companies, telecommunications companies. There needs to be more dialogue. But if I can go back on infrastructure and where we are from some of the universities, then, and this is a whole other topic, but with the ability of using AI now, right, that changes the dynamics completely, right? So I mean, in one day, one can create a dashboard for a university, a CRM, right? Um, there's the world has changed in the last 6-7 months, right?
Mm.
And that is positive if you take the positive of like not being worried about the jobs aspects of it. But from an Africa perspective, I have a different hat on, which I say, this helps us again use that word leapfrog, right? So we can create more technology and some of the paraphrasing that the chief said basically about trying to teach a fish telemetry. I appreciate it. It's the same idea. We can literally manifest a lot of AI into, and I will say this, I think everybody on this panel or on this call knows we're pretty creative when it comes to solutions in the continent. And imagine now with AI and our creativity. So I think if universities again have leadership that let them run, right?
Okay.
I think we will see a big leapfrog.
All right. So all of the things you mentioned reminds me of a few things. So let me veer into reliability of some of these structures. I'm saying that because institutions can have issues when they have to think about how to manage the productivity of the system's performance during peak periods. Okay, so in your perspective, how should these things be managed? Because when there's pressure on systems, okay, they can crash. But we are, for example, on this platform, we are talking about how to make these things work and push higher educational institutions to get into these spaces. So in the situation of managing this systems, how should they go about it so that in peak periods when there's high demand for it, how are they supposed to manage it?
Was that a question for me or
Sorry to you, Negusi. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Are we talking about infrastructure and managing cloud computing? Again, it comes down to my favorite part. My favorite department is the Department of ICT.
Mhm.
And realistically speaking, in today's world, if there's more dialogue, you will find a way to manage all of that with ease. So I mean, our head of IT manages multiple universities, and we're able to see when the entrance of the programs are, how many students, right? So we're able to manage all of the steps. Um, with regards to, here's my hack to all the educators that are on here. You know, ask ChatGPT, right? It will tell you exactly how to manage that. And I want us to start implementing AI in our conversation, right? Um, I don't want us to have a conversation next year and said, "Hey, I didn't know you could have done this on chat," right? But embrace it, use it, so that we can all have the same dialogue, so that we're not talking about LMS infrastructure, content development, so that we're talking about AI, right? Next year.
All right. So let me come back to you, Chief, still on infrastructure. Do you think that universities are approaching data security and privacy seriously, or is there more that needs to be done?
Bunch of excellent questions, my friend, today. I think the onset of data privacy is something relatively new to the continent. I say this because I know in other parts of the world you have the HIPAA compliance, you have the privacy laws, and I think, for example, Nigeria just introduced a GDPR about 2-3 years or so ago, officially rolling out a policy framework behind that. So I think we are catching up to the realization. There's a lot more to be done, but I do know that it's now front and center in most universities and administrative offices. They are now aware of some level of data privacy and data policy, but it only gets strengthened. And I don't want to say that we don't have safeguards in place, but the fact that we haven't heard of a breach does not mean that it's not happening. The fact that you know we're not talking about the paper and the pencil transactions that take place in most institutions. Some institutions are not 100% paperless. So what happens to student records that are stored or thrown outside, for example?
Yeah.
I don't want to go too far, but I do know that in some instances, I might go buy peanut outside, and while eating peanut, I might be reading about somebody's exam with their names and everything on the paper.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with your last statement. I've seen that happen sometimes here in my country, Ghana, so I can pretty much understand where that conversation is going. Anyway, still with you, Chief, with regards to equity. Um, let's talk a little bit about gender. Do you know or have you noticed any gender disparities in digital learning participations and their outcomes in any higher education institution? Have you seen anything like that anywhere?
I don't want to speak without having any empirical information to back, but I do know that the disparity already exists in major parts of Nigeria. For example, in the northern part of Nigeria, we do know that young women do not go to school. We do know that the gap is drastic, it's night and day. So if we introduce that to the digital world, then we also know that it's prevalent as well. Just from the very fact alone that we know that they're not being engaged in the classroom, they're not going to school. So that also translates in the digital world.
All right, thank you. So same question to you, Mr. Negusi. Do you know of any disparities when it comes to gender on this subject, sir?
No, because everything we're involved in is on the higher education side, graduate degrees. So we see great gender inclusion from the higher education side, from professors and participants. So I maybe in the K to 12 space that might be more relevant.
Okay. All right. So let's stay with you a bit more, Mr. Negusi. So what frameworks or policies do you believe would be essential for promoting genuinely inclusive learning environments?
Well, again, I think that's more of a K to 12 environment, we are working on curricula because there are different parts of the continent that do not let young women go to school after a certain age. But here, I mean, we have been designing online curricula for a particular West Africa country, and it is primarily K to 12, and it's so that people have access to it. I think from an online learning perspective, it takes away some of the cultural differences, religious differences. So it lets them be able to at least acquire a 12th grade education from the comfort of their homes. So, but that could be applicable for somebody that has disabilities. That could be for somebody that also has to quit school to help the family, which we know often happens, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's our realities are very normal in the sense that I think, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So still with you, Mr. Negusi, you are the CEO of eLearn Africa, LMS. Now, how well does the current digital course contents on offer reflect the diverse cultural and linguistic realities of African learners?
Linguistic, none.
Okay.
Everything we build out is in English. And
Okay.
I will say that we have been speaking with our first two Luso countries, right, in Angola and Mozambique, but primarily English. And the reason for it is, Nigeria, South Africa, Sierra Leone, right, Uganda. Most of the countries we deal with are primarily English speaking. So the linguistic part hasn't come into our conversation yet, except for Mozambique and Angola. But we definitely, I definitely see where this is going, but more for undergraduate studies, but not graduate studies.
So can we say that is some sort of work in progress?
Let me be very blunt about it, if I may. Most graduate degrees, yeah, this is, well enough. Most graduate degrees, even in French-speaking African countries, are prefer to be done in English. And the reason for it is because they get jobs. Morocco, they prefer it in English. And it just comes down to it is about just landing that job afterwards.
Okay. All right. So the final question to you again, Mr. Negusi, what practical steps do you believe are most urgent currently for reducing financial barriers that students face in digital learning?
Well, we're dealing with this across the continent right now. And when I say we're dealing with it head first. We have taken the practical approach and understanding. Again, there's pride, and you have to be sensitive with the student's pride as well about affordability. So with eLearn, what we have done is we have put together a finance package. So students are able to pay for the online degree monthly. So it does not become burdensome to the student. No gotchas, no bank fees. Bank fees, yes, no interest. When I say bank fees, interest. And that's it. So a $2,000 degree in Nigeria is spread out over 15 payments. So now a civil servant can even afford it, right? A JALA, I think for an MBA, it starts off under $200 a month now, right? So no, it's the affordability factor and the financial factor has been a big concern. I think we should see more a private-public partnership in that aspect. I think employers should be definitely more involved in helping out their employees. They say they will. Governments say that they will, right? But since I'm on a platform to at least say something, right? I wanted to say something.
Well, okay, that's well noted. I see you don't want to go too deep into that, so we'll leave it there. So, Chief, let me ask you your final question on this segment. How should universities be assessing equity? I mean, not just in access, but in learning outcomes and then academic success.
You are definitely full of really, really good questions today, my brother. I think
Thank you.
from I think to define and actually measure equity, I think we have to look about how geographically separated is your are your students. You know, what is the ratio to male versus female when it comes to graduation? What is the ratio of minorities, women, for example, low-income students, individuals with disabilities? Um, what is the makeup of your student base? I think when you start talking about equity and that measure, then the question becomes: are you actually reaching out to these disenfranchised group of individuals, or are we just reaching out to the individuals who can pay and afford for quality education? And again, that becomes a great disservice to the individuals in this last mile regions. So I think, again, the onus would be on the university to create more inclusive learning programs that can reach as far and as wide to all individuals. I think that would be a good measure of how you define success
Mm.
for equitable learning.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So if you have just joined this session, this is the e-learning summit 2026 under the theme e-learning priorities for African universities, and then we have just finished our first panel discussion, and it was on the subject bridging the digital divide. We were talking about access, infrastructure, and equity. So at this time, we would just want to allow for a few questions for our panelists. If there are any questions, kindly show by hand in the Teams app, and then it will give you the chance to ask your questions. I think I see Hamdi. Forgive me if I don't pronounce the names correctly. I see Hamdi's hand up. So Hamdi Ibrahim, yes, you can go ahead and ask your questions, please. Kindly unmute yourself. Yeah. Sorry, Hamdi, we can't hear you. You're still muted. Hamdi, I see you're still muted I see from my end you're still muted.
Can the admin unmute him?
Okay. Okay, if he cannot be unmuted, let's take. Okay, Hamdi, can kindly go on, please. You're still not audible. Okay, let's go to Felicia, and then we'll come back to Hamdi later. Felicia. Felicia Ibuka, I think is the name. I see your hand raised. Felicia, are you with us? Or maybe you
Yes. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Felicia.
Can you hear me now? Good afternoon.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes,
kindly go ahead with your question.
It's a great topic and timely too. The question I just want to ask for the panelists is that for those people in the practical part, that they need to demonstrate, especially, let me talk about agriculture, because I'm in that sector. How do they train them? How do they demonstrate, when it comes to practical? Because at the end, we are training them to be of value and of impact. How do we incorporate practical section into the e-learning? Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you so much, Felicia. Mr. Negusi, do you want to take that?
Yes, because this is a challenge we've been trying to address for quite some time. And Ms. Felicia, you're absolutely right. How do you address the practicum of building out an online agricultural class? It has to be hybrid. It has to be where you can do the online course, but the practicum, you would have to go to a local center to do a practicum. There is no other way to do it properly, in our opinion. And I say that with full humility, and I work with a world-renowned agronomist, who has been saying exactly the same thing to me for the last 3 years, actually, or 4.
All right. Thank you very much. Chief, feel free if you will have anything to add to the answers that might be coming. If the two of you have answers, we would appreciate that. So at any time, please feel free to chip in. All right. Thank you very much, Felicia. Let's take the next one from Chinedu.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thanks everyone. Glad to be here. I think this is a very timely topic that needs to evolve faster than required. To the panel, I've been involved in things like this, and we recently launched kind of complete future-facing programs in partnership with a university in Nigeria, Alex Ekweme Federal University. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Professor Chineda Ekuma. I was in the university and now run my own company, and I also work for Meta as a senior data scientist. So going back to what I was saying earlier on, one thing I think we should be wary of is the quality. Something I've tried to leverage, and I want to get the opinion of the panel on this, is one thing I've tried to do is to leverage international communities, experts in both academia and in the industry to deliver these courses. I wanted to get the the feedback from the panel, how this could be done, to at least improve on what I'm already doing at the Institute for Future Skills and Innovation. And as I had in the chat there, we have a native LMS that is, is scalable. We have, serverless server, meaning bandwidth is never our issue because we are hosted on AWS. We're leveraging the best technology out there to scale up. You can check out the website. We have a partnership link there that we could actually deploy and implement the same, infrastructure for that purpose. So I'll wait for the team to get feedback on the other one, mainly quality and how do you do this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Chinedu. Any comments from our panelists on that? Otherwise, we can move on to the...
Sure.
Yeah.
I could take one real quick.
I'll let Chief go ahead first.
Right,
You're
Chief.
too kind,
Let's
sir.
hear.
You're too kind. Just wanted to touch on one quick thing. We have individuals in the space station, right? There's so many things you cannot test on Earth, right? But how do we train them to be able to function properly in space? I want you guys to just hold on to that thought. I have trained electricians, journeymen, plumbers. We have simulations now. We have inclusive learning. We have immersive learning. There are a number of technologies we can use to substitute, the traditional physical touch until that is required. I just wanted to bring that up as we're discussing the agricultural programs. There are simulations that we can run, but nothing really takes away from the physical process. But nonetheless, we do have ways to augment that one. So going back to Mr. Chinedu, I think the content itself, if you're using international instructional designers, for example, to help build courses, that is completely fine. I think the fear we keep having is that same one size fits all approach where you have this English language or it's French. There are no culturally diverse examples or content in there. So it's somewhat catering to the wrong crowd. It may be somewhat efficient, but it might not be as effective. So I think, to your point, if there's a way that we can find a way to find local content providers, individuals who actually have that context awareness, who can create our own voices as opposed to we hearing echoes. I think that's what I keep resounding here. Then we have some content that is specific and unique to us. There's no reason why we should be importing content at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Mr. Neguzi,
if I may, because you're absolutely right. So the content aspect of it is probably where we excel from eLearn LXD, which is our instructional design side. Quality assurance, you have to have quality assurance people. So our team is comprised of people that have been in the online learning space for about 20 years. And our idea was that when we build an online degree and launch an online degree from a university in the continent, that it should never be where somebody compares it to a Western online degree. It should be better, meaning that it's going to have the same look, feel. It's going to be gamified, the same feel, right? But the content here is from the University of Nigeria. It's from Sierra Leone. It's from South Africa, Uganda, and that makes a world of difference. So
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So what I was.
All right. So let's take the next one from Mr. Lucas. Your hand is up, and I understand there are some questions in the chat as well. I'll go there shortly. Mr. Lucas, if we can hear you.
Testing. Am I audible?
We can hear you, sir, loud and clear.
Awesome. Thank you so much. My name is Mr. Lucas from Namibia, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm really learning a lot. My question is, what role can partnerships with industry play in integrating practical work-based technical training into the e-learning programs to ensure that our students gain both theoretical and applied expertise? I believe Dr. Yare mentioned that we should take into consideration the aspect of the conversation where we spoke about practical skills within the agricultural space, but what else can be done where students are supposed to learn by doing practical hands-on type of things? I'm under the assumption that you learn quicker by doing things with your hands versus by reading. And since in the education system, we are currently also having an issue with artificial intelligence lowering critical thinking, what exactly can industry players do to assist in that regard? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Negusi, you want to go first?
Sure. I think I will address the last comment first, which is addressing AI and lowering critical thinking, right? I actually think it's the opposite. I think in order to use AI effectively, you have to be a good critical thinker. And as you write your prompts, it will do better for you. So the better educated you are, and how to use that technology, the things that you can pull off with AI is absolutely phenomenal. So no, I think we're in a special moment overall. I think we should just leave it there, which is we're in such a special moment as a continent that we should actually have a whole conference just on AI, because we've been playing with it at eLearn. We have a team that's been automating a whole bunch of stuff, and I see how a different person thinks differently, and applying it with AI, how quickly things can change. And if we can translate this to our governments, then now we have full automation.
Thank you very much, Chief.
If you don't mind, please. I think I had to share a heart sign for you there. I appreciate I appreciate what you said. So this is one of the great battles I've been fighting for the last year or so. There is this negative connotation when you hear AI, like it's here to steal your job. AI only brings out what's in you, right? If you're good, then you're going to be better using AI. I've seen individuals who use AIs and they write the most weird prompts and they start blaming AI for, providing wrong information. But you should understand that the whole concept of garbage in, garbage out is very relevant when it comes to AI. So the more informed you are, the more sharpened your discipline is in your profession, the more you can tackle AI, the more you can actually challenge AI, right? AI is known to hallucinate, but it only hallucinates to individuals who don't have that domain expertise. So if you're not already a subject matter expert in your field, or if you don't know what exactly you're researching on, then yes, you will follow the bandwagon and suggest that AI is, it's nonsense. It's not providing relevant information. It's causing brain drain. But that's the opposite. I seriously agree with my colleague here that we probably need to have more orientation around AI, its effectiveness, and how to better serve yourself going forward. So back to the individual who mentioned practical skills. I think prompt engineering is a practical skill. I think you should learn how to be an orchestrator, right? You should be able to orchestrate. You should know how to reach out to the AI. You should know how to prompt for the right response. You should know how to evaluate. These are all things we should be teaching individuals, not running away from AI, but how to use AI more effectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. Let me take a couple of questions in the chat session. This is coming from Dr. Shumeta Sefa, and he has about 3 questions. I'll probably take one. And it says, what scalable models exist for extending digital education to rural and underserved communities? Mr. Negusi, can you take that, please?
Yes, and that's by designing a curriculum where it's asynchronous with very low video, so there's no bandwidth. So students are able to download onto hardware. So when they're in rural areas, that they're able to use their hardware to do the online learning. So, and I say that only because 2 years ago I would have said, "Oh, we've got to work with your telco to extend wireless access." No, I truly believe just download the hardware. We've seen USBs, but yeah, it's just much easier to take the responsibility on our own.
Right. Thank you very much. Chief, do you want to add up?
Sure. So most institutions actually run learning management systems. Some dimension of your learning management system offers offline access, right? With the right device, I've seen institutions, I've actually implemented solutions where whenever you have access to internet, you can download your course materials. And while you don't have access, you can use your course materials offline. And whenever you have access, you can resynchronize with the server and go back online. So we do have a number of solutions available to scale this offline access. We even have solutions where it's completely offline. You can use a USB, you can have a Bluetooth enabled device transfer courses to multiple devices. And when they're done taking the courses, they take assessments, and when they're done, they get their completion reports and all that good stuff. So we do have those solutions in place, and I would advise if you're in the market for something like that, you can reach out to us, and we're more than happy to assist you.
Right. Thank you very much, Chief. So Lucas has just responded in the comment section saying, thank you for sharing this perspective. I was initially strongly against AI, but after hearing your thoughts, I've become more curious about how it can enhance critical thinking. I also acknowledge the issue of AI hallucinations, and I would like to ask whether it is possible to organize an event on AI in education in Africa. Mr. Lucas from Zambia. Surely. Thank you so much. We'll think about that and see what we can do about it. So I want to take
sorry, correction, Namibia.
Namibia, rather. Sorry. Thank you for the correction. So I'll take the last question in this session from Ntowandili, if I got the name correct. Forgive me if I don't pronounce it well. I may not be familiar with it. Your hand is up. If you can ask your question quickly, and then we move on to the next session. Ntowandili is the name I see. Your hands are raised. Go ahead and ask your question, please. All right. If we are not getting any response, then we would certainly. Oh, he says his mic is disabled. Yeah. Just hold on 1 second. Let's try to disable it so you can ask your question. Just a second. My technical team is looking at it so we can activate the microphone for you. Sorry. Okay, kindly unmute yourself and speak now, please.
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So speaking is Advocate Ntowandili Cele. My apologies. My parents did not give me any white name. So unfortunately, we're just gonna have to struggle. But usually for all my non-African counterparts, I just ask them to call me Wandi because I think it's easier. So,
Thank you.
okay,
Thank you, Wandi.
this is Advocate Wandi from the Center of Community Justice and Development in KZN in South Africa. So in terms of my question today, so outside of the scope of being an executive director, I'm also a clinical legal education practitioner with the University of KwaZulu-Natal, together with Nelson Mandela University. And I was given an opportunity to present on the importance or the value of using artificial intelligence to enhance clinical legal education and advocacy, particularly in the stringent field that we find ourselves in legal practice. So my question then is, in relation to AI and digital technologies, transforming every field, which is including law, how can undergraduate students that are often underprepared for legal practice once they've completed their studies use artificial intelligence and digital technologies to answer to traditional research and case management methods without hallucinations? Because I think that's one of the biggest pushbacks that I've got from the National University Law Clinic Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Wandi. Yes, Mr. Negusi, please take it.
I actually have firsthand experience in this, and seeing somebody that built out a case management system using Claude from a defense perspective. Again, it's how you write your prompts, and I'm more than happy to introduce you to this gentleman that did this and how he did it for his law firm. But we're seeing more and more, advocates, teachers, doctors creating ways to, I guess, make themselves more efficient using AI. And if I may do one more last plug-in on where we are with this, like when I entertain me for 2 seconds, where we are right now is we're in the agentic era. So it's basically using agents to create solutions, and that will create jobs and that will create industry, right? We are in probably one of the most beautiful parts of AI. It's back to like being in 1998 in the United States when people were developing websites. That's how we should look at AI. It's just that it's a raw form. And for the ones that harness that technology right now, we're able to build out agents. So, and that's the agentic side of AI is going to be so much better for humanity, in my opinion, because we'll be able to control of it, right? We won't have SaaS services that we have to worry about from, mentioning the company Oracle now. It sounds weird because, I can build a software as a software to manage my daily activities very easily. So to answer your question, there are many lawyers and there's law groups that I know very well that have created agents using AI, and I highly encourage you.
All right. Thank you so
Please.
much, Mr. Negusi. Yeah, Chief, you kindly add up to it and then we can wrap up here.
Sure. So AI is that's my field, right? So Wandi, let's take it a step further. I'm currently working with an NGO in Ethiopia, right? And they're more into diagnosis, right? Diagnosing individuals using AI. So that's more life and death, right? So there's zero room for hallucination, if you understand why I'm using this example. AI chatbots, agents have become so mature now that there's something called RAG, right? Where you introduce a document and somewhat lock that AI to specifically be bound to only the contents of that document, which drastically reduces hallucination. So in my case, where we have diagnostic agents actually running symptom checkers for individuals, it's checking against a predefined set of references that we provide, we train the AI on this information so it does not deviate from what we provided. So in your case, it's a pretty standard process where we just need to tighten up the guardrails for you so it reduces hallucination. But it's very much possible. It's very much possible.
All right, thank you so much, Chief. Okay, I see one last hand up. Let's do that within the next 1 minute. Rosemary, kindly unmute and take your question, please. Rosemary, can you hear me? Rosemary, I think you're unmuted now, so kindly go ahead. Okay, I also see Dr. Okay, Rosemary, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. No, I was not able to unmute myself, but thank you so much for that. I'm Rosemary Manyevere, Dr. Rosemary Manyevere from Nelson Mandela University, Department of Tourism. I'm interested in this issue of especially on AI.
Sorry, Rosemary, we are not hearing you now. We seem to be losing you. Can you?
Give them an assignment. Them an assignment topic, and then what they do next time is just to give you back what is coming from AI. Nothing, there's no creative thinking, there's nothing, they just use AI as it is, and then they give you back the assignment. What can we do to encourage our learners or our students to use AI wisely? I don't know, but I just see similar assignments that are coming from the students, and you actually discover that no, one assignment cannot be presented the same from the different individuals. Something that is coming to you, and I'm just marking assignment instead of marking the work of the student. What can we do at higher level institutions? Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. So, Chief, kindly take this one for us, and then maybe Mr. Negusi will add up, and then we move on.
Sure. I think again, I will push that back to the individuals who create the assignments, right? So when we invented calculators, what type of questions did we start asking our students? Were we still asking them 1+1, or were we trying to create more engaging and thoughtful type of equations for them to use the calculator to solve? So to my point is, if we know that AI can provide stuff, then why don't you create more engaging, more difficult related projects that requires more level of critical thinking, not only just asking the AI like it's Google, but using it to feed more type of project related information that you know what the intended outcome is, but the students don't know. So I think I'll push that back on you to create more engaging, more thought provoking type of engaging assignments for these individuals to use AIs for. Again, I harken back to the introduction of calculators and what type of questions we started asking after that.
Right. Thank you, Chief. Mr. Negusi, any words on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can 100% agree with Chief on that. There's something that I've seen in practice from a student perspective that's always impressed me. There's students that create bots so that they can summarize their modules, right? So, I mean, there's workflow ideas that work really well with AI. So thus making, time value and something that we're going to concentrate on eventually, money, right? Time value equals money. So it will give you more efficiency. Now, if you have students that are turning in projects using AI, there are detection systems and softwares that we implement on our on all our degrees, so we know exactly if you use chat or Wikipedia and so on and so forth. So, but no, I think to create efficiency, yeah, absolutely use AI.
All right, thank you so much. We are almost running out of time in this session, but I still see one more hand. I think it's the last one, so I'll allow it. Dr. Abubakar, if you can see this or you can hear me, kindly go ahead with your question, and then we'll move into the next segment right after this. So this will be officially the last question for the segment. Dr. Abubakar, can you hear me? Dr. Abubakar Habib Idris, can you hear me? All right, okay. I'll just do the announcement then, and then we can move on into the next panel discussion. So, by way of announcement, the Association of African Universities, AAU, is in collaboration with eLearn Africa, is pleased to announce a flagship executive leadership workshop titled Digital Transformation in Practice, from Strategy to Execution, scheduled to take place from Tuesday, 5th to Friday, 8th May 2026 at the AAU Secretariat in Accra. And if you are hearing me on this call now, there's a link in the comment section for this announcement. Kindly go ahead and click on it and then fill the form if you are interested, and then we can get you registered for that event. Thank you so much. So I want to thank my panelists for this first session, Mr. Brooke Negusi, CEO of eLearn, and then Chief Etinosa, thank you so much for your time. Your session was very insightful and very productive, and I can feel the energy already. We appreciate your time so much. We want to move into the next session, which is also another discussion, and we are going to be talking about driving quality and relevance. And under this, we are talking about pedagogy, faculty development, and workforce alignment. And then my panelists for this session, panel discussion number 2, Kwesi Sam Akwa, Dr. Sharif Swaliho, and then Jeremiah Boabin, CEO of Group Boabin. So I'll just briefly introduce them by way of a small introduction, and then we can begin. Some of you have very long profiles, but I'll try to make it very, very short so that we can have enough time to discuss. So Kwesi Akwasam is a counseling psychologist with 13 years of working experience in student affairs and higher education in Africa. He served as the head of student affairs and university partnerships, projects and programs officer within the Directorate of Research and Academic Planning of the Association of African Universities, AAU, the apex higher education body for all African universities, headquartered in Accra, Ghana. Prior to joining the Association of African Universities, Kwesi was a counseling special education and psychologist instructor at the College of Distance Learning, University of Cape Coast, Ghana. He has managed multiple higher education projects for several African international education bodies, such as the Association of the Development of Education in Africa, ADEA, hosted by the African Development Bank, Trust Africa, the African Union's Agenda 2063, and the Continental Education Strategy for Africa. He has designed and facilitated over 200 policy dialogues, workshops, and conferences on topical issues pertinent to African higher education, such as access, retention, graduation rates of higher education institutions, problems of diversity and inclusion, quality, teaching, learning, research, and community practice, as well as gender responsive leadership, equality, equity, and graduate employability, among others. So that is for our first panelist for this session, Kwesi Akwasam. You're welcome to this platform, sir.
Thank you.
All right, our next panelist is Dr. Sharif Swaliho. He's an academic and administrator at Njala University, where he serves as the director of the Institute of Social Studies, Administration and Management, that is ISSAM, and a lecturer in accounting and finance. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Accounting and an MBA in Finance from Njala University, as well as an MPhil in Accounting and Finance from the University of Sierra Leone. With over a decade of experience in teaching, research, and academic administration, his work focuses on accounting, financial management, governance, and public sector accountability. He has contributed to curriculum development, institutional leadership, and research on internal audit systems, financial inclusion, and higher education performance in Sierra Leone. You're very much welcome, Dr. Sharif. All right, I'll move on to my next panelist, Mr. Jeremiah Boabin. So Jeremiah Boabin is the founder and chief executive officer of Group Boabin, which comprises Boabing Books Limited, Corporate Toolbox Limited, and Eniji Restaurants. He has over 10 years experience addressing professionals and organizations in relevant human capital development areas. He has trained, addressed, or consulted for companies including DataBank, Jospon Group, Novotel Now, Accra City Hotel, Finney Hospital, Blue Mirage Hotel, Leshego Ghana Limited, Soccer Bets, Olam Ghana, the Rotary Club, Grand Park Clothing, Lekma Polyclinic, Cody's Ghana Limited, Health Star Group, and many more. As a trainer, he has expertise in communications, marketing, management, leadership, organizational development, and corporate governance. Jeremiah has a compelling story. At the age of 17, he had delivered his first presentation as a public speaker. By age 20, he had started hosting major conferences, which featured many notable speakers, including Uncle Lebo White, Kojo Nkrumah, Manasseh Azure Awuni, Albert Okwan, Kweku Sintim Misa, Bernard Avle, Kafui D, and many more. By age 24, he had published his first book. At age 27, he had started his first company. From that beginning, he has evolved into a serial entrepreneur who has founded multiple businesses. I can keep going on and on and on and on about Mr. Jeremiah Boabing. Welcome, gentlemen, to this platform and to the second session.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll go straight into the conversations, and we are talking about driving quality and relevance. So we are looking at pedagogy, faculty development, and workforce alignment. The objective of this session is to gather experts' perspectives on how universities are elevating the quality and impact of their online programs through innovative pedagogy, faculty capacity building, and alignment with the workforce demands. All right, so let me begin with you, Mr. Kwesi Akwasam. In your opinion or from your perspective, how has online pedagogy evolved and what fundamental shifts still need to happen?
All right. Thank you very much, my brother, Philemon. And it's good to be back home virtually at this point. Yes. And this is a very essential conversation that we're having at this moment. I believe that my colleagues from AAU who are on the platform could remember that somewhere around 2012, we have moved from skepticism to 2020 when COVID happened to acceptance of online education, online pedagogy. I remember in those days, people were just chastising institutions that were operating fully online, questioning their quality and all of that until COVID happened in 2020, where it forced all of us into using emergency digitization. I remember in 2016 as well, the AAU implemented web-based seminars, which was a departure from the face-to-face event. And I quite remember that you could put in all the resources to put these programs together, but faculty, administrators, and participants across African universities were a bit skeptical of joining because they were used to the face-to-face approach of content delivery and everything. And so when COVID happened, it became a new reality. Most of us refer to that as the new normal, where students were forced, researchers were forced to use online resources to really advance education and learning. And so at that particular moment, I would say that is where across the continent, I would pivot where e-learning, online pedagogy really evolved from. But before that, most of us may have used Coursera, may have used MOOCs and all of that in taking some advanced learning and everything. But for us as a people on the continent, I remember that during the pandemic, we used to have 17, 20, 35 participants from 2016 to 2019. But in 2020, we could have as much as 1,000 people gathered on Zoom wanting to leverage Zoom resources to advance their academic engagement within their universities. So it tells you that right from there, people really accepted online pedagogy, people really accepted online academic delivery and everything. But at that point, most of our universities across the continent were just using which kind of transition the face-to-face lecture approach to online. And so students would just go on Zoom with their cameras closed, and instruction was still instructor-based. Professors were the ones who were teaching, and students were participating very less in the process. And like the first speakers really alluded to, were using Telegram, and some were using WhatsApp to still communicate, which was good, right? I call them the emergency devices, which was good to still keep the learning doors open across our universities. But I think we've moved to a place where we are talking much more about learning engagement than just a repository where you keep academic materials for students to engage with. So I think from 2021 upwards, we've seen some universities still using blended approach to teaching and learning, whilst others have transitioned fully to face-to-face. And so that conversation across the continent is there, and not even the African continent alone, across the globe. There are institutions that are still using the blended approach. They are using both the synchronous and asynchronous methods to teaching. And I think where fundamentally we need to shift is the learning engagement, right? Like I mentioned, we need to move from having a repository where students can just access learning materials to a point where we are advancing quality teaching and learning. And pedagogy, I always say that transition from one content creation, right? You need to be very smart and systemic about the content creation. You need to be very much systemic about the content delivery. And that is what is the most important thing. And the third is the learning process, right? And so we want to make sure that students are engaging with the learning materials in a very holistic approach. Right after COVID, those of us who still teach in the classrooms could tell that students who migrated from high school levels to universities found it much more challenging to engage within the human space. And learning is not just about give me the knowledge, let me just assimilate it rotely and then pour it back to you, just as some of us are used to. But there are a lot of human interaction that contributes to human development in the learning space. There are a lot of cross-cultural exchange that also exists within the space. So, for example, when you go to a traditional university, you will find students coming from all diverse backgrounds. You will find students coming from other gender, religious, social set, which really contribute to learning, creation, and all of that, and also cross-cultural learning, which you do not find traditionally on the online space, right? And so academics, faculty need to be very intentional about incorporating all these into their learning if we want to move solely into online pedagogy. And again, faculty development is important, and I really appreciate the first speakers for highlighting that. We need to be very intentional about the way we are setting our exams questions. We need to be intentional about the way we are creating our content, which must be relatable to the lived experience of the student who are going through the education process, so that at the end of the day, the education that they are receiving speaks to every aspect of them. So I think that that is where we have evolved to. And I think some of us are doing great across the continent. Others also have a lot to really learn from those who are taking lead in that.
Thank you so much. That's very deep there. So Jeremiah, let me come to you on the area of pedagogy. What does genuine engagement look like in digital learning environments for you? When you talk about genuine engagement, what does it look like for you? Or what does it mean for you? Jeremiah, can you hear me? I think you're muted. I think your mic is unmuted, but I don't kindly try to unmute from your end and let's see. Unfortunately, I still see that you are muted from here.
Is it possible for the admin to unmute him?
Yes, we are trying to look at that as well.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
We are getting our technical team to look at this. I'm not sure why we can't hear Jeremiah when he speaks. Apologies, please. In the meantime, maybe I can engage Dr. Sharif. Dr. Sharif, are you here? I don't see you as well on the call, but I know you are. I saw that you had entered the meeting earlier. Dr. Sharif. All right, I don't see Dr. Sharif at the moment. No problem. So Kwesi, let's keep talking then. Our colleagues will join us later. So maybe the same question I was asking Jeremiah. In terms of engagement, what does real engagement look like for you when we talk about digital learning environments? How deep should it go? Sorry, we can hear you as well. Somehow, some way.
All right. I think we need to generally move from, if you're talking about engagement, then you're looking at how students are able to interact within the learning space. And so mimically, when you look at the face-to-face engagement, you find a professor go to the classroom, share knowledge, students have the chance to ask questions, and then also interact with the professor within the learning space, and they're also able to engage with their peers. I think that is the most possible ways that we can transition online. And so we need to be very intentional about what engagement looks like online. And so course instructors must be very creative, right, in designing course element or course content that student can readily, regardless of their geographical location, will be able to interact with the course material. Beyond that, I think we need systems that will also enhance peer engagement through the learning process. So students are not just logging on Zoom or logging on the learning management platform, just observing the faculty or the professor teach, but how are they able to engage with the professor? How are they able to engage with the knowledge? How are they able to engage with their peers within the learning process? I think that is fundamental, right? Because like I mentioned, there are a lot of soft skills that we develop within the face-to-face environment. And now with all the learning materials and resources that we have, it's possible to translate that into the online space. So I think universities, faculty members just need to be very intentional about what engagement looks like. What do you really want your student to learn from whatever course material you are putting out, and how are you incorporating them as part of the knowledge generators, right? They are not just there to, like in the traditional university settings where a class may have 5,000 or 500 students and learning instruction is just one way or unilateral, right? But how do you ensure that students are able to engage with professors, be able to engage with their colleagues in the learning process, and be able to facilitate that learning as well? So we need faculty members upskilling their skills as well, to move from that traditional orientation of content delivery to a point where they become much more of facilitators of knowledge within the space. And I believe that when students go into academic settings where the content is very familiar to them. Number two, they are able to relate with their peers within the space. Number three, the professor is able to translate the knowledge in a language that they best understand. Then that has the ability to kind of improve the learning process that exists. So we can model the same thing and transport that into the online space, which is now possible. On this platform, for example, we had participants asking questions, we had participants engaging with their peers and all of that. They had a chance to ask questions verbally and all of that, and that improves engagement. You get a chance to create breakout rooms and all of that. And so at the end of the day, the students are not just passive in the learning process, but they become like active and they contribute to the knowledge that is happening within that ecosystem.
Very beautiful explanation. It just reminds me of the book by Paulo Freire.
Yes.
We talked about the pedagogy of the oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much. So I'll get back to Jeremiah. I think Jeremiah has joined us again. I think now he should be able to speak. Jeremiah, can you hear me?
Hi. Good.
Great.
Good
Great.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us back in the meeting. So I want to engage you quickly on the workforce alignment. So how well do you think the universities are keeping pace with labor market evolution, and where are the biggest mismatches?
Well, I mean, we are speaking with regards to universities within our context. I mean, when I engage with university lecturers and professors, especially in Ghana, I don't even think that they are even listening to what industry has to say about the misalignment between what academia is doing and what industry is expecting. I think that the first barrier is attitude. The attitude is a certain attitude that says, we have gone to school, we have studied, you can't tell us what to do. So when you identify weaknesses or loopholes or gaps in academia that has to be plugged in order for academia to become more industry ready, the response you get is more of defense or attack. And then very often what you tend to hear is, we are raising thinkers so that they can think, and then when they come, then you can train them. You can train them into whatever you want them to be. But you see, academia is what teaches marketing. And in marketing, one of the most critical things in marketing is that you listen to the customer. The customer needs becomes central to what you're doing. So if academia recognizes that the people that it is developing and training is for industry, then they might want to take a second look at listening to what industry has to say. I have been an entrepreneur for 11 years. In 11 years, I've tried to double the number of 4 different businesses. That means that I've engaged with thousands of young people looking for jobs. Either they are fresh out of school, they've been working for a while. And I see a gaping hole between what they know or what they can do or what the workplace requires. And I think that there must be a bit of humility from both sides of the discussion, both from industry and from academia, to understand that, look, all of us have one goal. Our goal is to raise or develop top-notch human capital. If that's the goal, how can we collaborate to ensure that this happens? I mean, maybe another barrier could also be the fact that academia moves in multi-year curriculum cycles and industry involves in months. So maybe academia is struggling to catch up. But for me, my biggest issue from where I stand as an entrepreneur CEO who hires people, I don't think the problem is a curriculum problem. The problem is not a curriculum problem. It's not about content. It's about approach or orientation, right? So very often you realize that graduates understand concepts. They understand the concepts. But the struggle is in how to apply them in real world context. So if we could shift our education more from memorizing concepts, understanding concepts, explaining concepts, to actually being able to do, that will make a lot of difference. I mean, one of the things that can be leveraged to achieve it. I mean, if I was envisioning an ideal university environment, my vision would be for us to turn universities into simulator companies. A university is developing people for industry. So the university environment must become a simulator company environment where everything that is happening there is like a company that's trying to achieve its goals and is getting students to work towards these goals. In an ideal universe, that's what I would want. The university should become a simulator company, so that people are not just, if someone is studying psychology, for instance, then the person is not just learning psychology, the person is learning how to apply psychology to workplace situations, psychology in dealing with conflict. So there are situations or environments that are created for people to actually put this knowledge to use. So university should move beyond just ensuring that people know what, but people know how. But how, not only in terms of being able to recall how it's done, but how in terms of being able to actually do the thing. So there should be more doing. But because we don't live in an ideal universe, an easier way that universities can adapt to bridge this gap, to solve this challenge, is to take internships far more seriously than it does. A couple of years ago, my HR tried to reach out to a few universities about collaborating with them to bring us interns. I mean, the response we got didn't sound like an institution that recognized that the internships were important for their students. But I say this, students don't want internships. Students need internships. Because internships are opportunities for people, for students to come into the real world and practice the knowledge that they have acquired, to hone their skills, to move from being just students to becoming professionals. You don't become a professional just by reading stuff. Become a professional by practicing stuff. So if academia and industry could collaborate to do more of these things, then students could get better. So like I said, I mean, I don't agree if they say if people say that the challenge is about the curriculum. Oh, the content is good. I mean, nowadays it's so easy to get updated content. You find that your lecturer is using the latest version of Philip Kotler's Principles of Marketing. Like, it's so easy to get up-to-date content. It's not about content. It's about approach. It's about execution. It's about implementation. How practical things are done and how students get to do some of these stuff. I mean, my opinion is that exams in its current form must change.
Okay.
Exam in its current form. I mean the kind of exams where we write where students go and study some topics, they go and study it, they come to sit down and write what they've studied. There are questions on list this, explain this, state this, narrate this, and all of those. It must change, but the real world doesn't work like that. So we must move from just doing exams to doing more practical projects. You do a project, if you're doing marketing, if you're doing entrepreneurship, if you're doing management, if you're doing biotechnology, come and do something with your hands. If you're doing entrepreneurship, students shouldn't just write papers on entrepreneurship. I mean, set up an actual business. If someone is going to do entrepreneurship for 1 year in school, in the 1 year that they're doing entrepreneurship, they start a business at the beginning of the year and run it for a year. That's the kind of learning that can take us to where we need to be in the 21st century.
Thank you very much, Jeremiah. I see somebody, Edem Kweku Medose, agreeing with you in the comment section, saying that the internships are often made optional. It should be a graduation requirement. I almost want to agree with that statement. You know. Yeah. Anyway,
and
so
in our place, in our organization, we've had situations where people come to do internship like a week or two, they stop and they have an excuse. My father said we should go here, and we are going for a funeral here, and all of those things. But if it was scoring, people wouldn't do what they do. And I've had interns in the many years that I've been in this business. It's just been one occasion that a liaison executive from the university came to actually check up on the student doing internship. It hardly happens. It hardly happens. So somebody can, and I've seen several instances where people have giving their forms for people to fill for them, even though they didn't do even a day of internship. We should be serious about these things.
That's sad. That's sad. Anyway, so since we're talking about collaboration between academia and industry, would it be okay to say that industry should have a hand in developing curriculum?
Yeah, absolutely.
You think it would be very meaningful?
Yeah, it can start from even co-creation of curriculum. So industry professionals should actively help design course content, not just to review, not just for academics to produce the course content and bring it to industry to review, but there must be a deliberate collaboration between industry and academia to create the course content. But very importantly, and I speak of this taking into cognizance of my environment. In Ghana, we don't value practitioners teaching. You have to have a PhD. If you don't have a PhD, you cannot teach in the lecture hall. But the error of that is that, one of the biggest disadvantages in academia is that academia is full of, and I say this with a lot of respect, forgive me, I know there are a lot of academics on this call, but academia is full of a lot of people who have gone to do a degree, do a master's, do a PhD with no or little industry experience. So how do you expect, it's like expecting somebody to teach someone to become a doctor who has never really practiced medicine before. There's a difference between insight and information. Information is what you get when you read a book. Insight is understanding you get from practice. So we need to get more practitioners in the university. I have been a publisher for over a decade. I mean, has any university waiting to come and deliver a lecture on publishing before? No, it rarely happens. So far, I've done only one public, one university guest lecture. Why? Because we think that if somebody doesn't have a PhD, they cannot teach in a university. But the focus, again, is because the focus is so much on theory, and we have very little emphasis on practice. So co-creation of curriculum, and then we embedding practitioners in the teaching and training of our people. So that brings me to my next point. Universities should move from just doing education to doing training. What's the difference? See, education teaches theories, concepts. It helps explains the reasoning, the thinking behind stuff. But training imparts skills. Training imparts skills. So at the beginning of every degree program, my view is that at the beginning of every degree program, universities should spell out and say that at the end of this program, you should have the following skills. So you're doing a degree in communication. So you should have skills in public speaking, proposal writing, presentation, and all of this. It should identify the skills that students should have at the end of the program. At present, that's not what happens. Both at the undergraduate level and the postgraduate level, as soon as you start a class, the emphasis is on examination. This topic is coming in the exams. If you go in my master's class, I was so disappointed. If you go to the exams, this is what you're expected to. I am a CEO in a master's class. Why are we talking about exams? I'm talking about exams. I came to learn strategy to improve how I run my business. So why are we doing real cases on how to apply strategy? Why are we talking about exams? So we should shift from an obsession with grades and examination to an obsession to skills. What can students do at the end of this course? Not what can students know at the end of this course. We must shift from knowing to doing. So at the beginning of every program, there must be identifiable skills that students must have at the end of the program. Then again, number 4, there should be live industry projects, like I've said already. There should be a lot of work, real business problems. So I see that, look, we should think of university environments. Like the way we're in secondary school, we saw a lot of science labs on our secondary school campus. Look, university should become a collection of labs. So if a chemistry student, if a medical student, or a chemistry student has a lab that they go and practice and they put into practice what they have learned, why doesn't marketing have that? Why doesn't accounting have that? Why doesn't HR have that? Why doesn't PR have that? Every program must have a lab. And that lab could be a simulator company. Students go and they put into practice the knowledge that they have acquired. Because you can interview people and they can give you all the smart answers and you give them the job, and that's what the problem is. So there must be live industry projects. I've talked about intentions already. Right.
Yeah. So Jeremiah, let me pause you on that point, on the 4th point. I want to take something from Dr. Sharif as well, with regards to faculty development. Dr. Sharif, can you hear me now? Dr. Sharif, can you hear me? If you can hear me, kindly unmute and just say a quick hello. Okay, I see you're unmuted now. You should be able to speak. And if you could kindly put your camera on for us, unless you're not in a place where you think you can do that, but would appreciate seeing your handsome face. All right, no problem. I think that Dr. Sharif is unable to hear us. So I'll continue with you, Kwesi. Let's come back to pedagogy. Okay. Quickly, in terms of integrating artificial intelligence into teaching and learning, what is your perspective on that, and how does that add value? I know we have talked about it briefly in the earlier session, and people made a lot of points on it, but I mean, you are speaking specifically to pedagogy. So what can you say about that?
I mean, that's an interesting one, and kudos to the first panel. I think their contributions were very spot on. We need to move again from the point of skepticism, right, to full acceptance within the education system. I think that and when I was listening to the contributions and the questions that were coming from the floor, most of the time in education, we are always we are always left behind, if I should say, before we understand the relevance and importance of something, it's already gone, right? And I like the example they made regarding the use of calculators, right? Calculators has never really changed our mathematical ability, right? And so AI is really important. I think the most important thing for us is the regulation, and then the promptings, right? How do we train our students to really leverage AI tools in the academic work in a way that it avoids plagiarism, in a way that it avoids other academic misconduct? And I think that is where we have not gone deeply into. Even in American universities, the conversation around AI usage in academic work is not cut in stone for every university. In my university, for example, there are professors. I work with student conduct, and so students who find themselves using AI in a non-responsible way are brought to my office, and then we adjudicate the cases and everything. And most of the time, I think it comes from the point where there is no clear instruction and pathway of AI usage in a course. And let me state this point emphatically, right? If you give money to the fool, right, it becomes a liability. But money in the hands of a wise person is an asset. And so if you do not train the student how to use it, then they are just going to misuse it. In one of my classes, for example, I posed a question, which was a very generic way of testing students' understanding about certain educational concept. And the question was for them to share their thought on education as a passport from poverty. And one of the students really, I think, didn't have time to study or engage with the material, just went online, placed that in ChatGPT, and then just pick the output and then turn it in. And we have academic systems and softwares. We have the Turnitin, we have the ChatGPT Zero, and all of that to really detect all these. And I didn't even place it in any of these. And when I was reading this concept, you know what I found? This student didn't have time to really synthesize and even understand the question in the first place. And so I found phrases like passport from Indonesia, passport from Malaysia, passport, and it tells the fact that if you put in garbage into any AI system, obviously garbage in, garbage out. So I think that we need a lot of regulation and policy and framework within the universities. What is expected? What we see in most of our institutions is that professors must clearly state on their syllabus, what is your AI policy for this class? What do you want students to learn, right? And how do you want them to leverage technologies to advance their learning and engagement within the class? And that settles everything, right? And you teach students how to use it. If you do not, and then you leave it in the hands of the student, obviously some of them are going to misuse it. Others are trying to find ways to just beat the system. Just as Jeremiah was saying, universities have always placed internship as a very critical requirement. But then students who sometimes have their own way of really beating the system, not really paying attention to all of that. So I think professors, academics must be very intentional about AI usage because it is very crucial, right? There are a lot of there's this misconception that AI will change our human effort, will replace us, and all of that. Listen, if you don't know what your subject is, trust me, there's no way AI will be able to replace it. You need, and the first panel said that, and it's very true. If you do not understand your content, if you do not have mastery over it, listen, you'll not be able to even put in the right prompt to get the right access and everything that you need. I think AI must facilitate our learning. It must facilitate our research. It must facilitate our support services that we render in our universities. But the critical and the most important thing is we need to come up with frameworks, we need to come up with policies, and not just behave like ostriches, right? So that the time that people are using the innovations to advance their economies, we are still left behind as a people. And so I like the fact that in this conversation this morning, people are beginning to understand that, hey, I'm going back to my university and looking at my AI policies. I'm going back to the university and looking at my AI resources and how to support my student use it in a very academic, confined way that is acceptable for students to use. It will never, for me, it will never. But I think when students are lazy, when students don't know what it's about, then that is where the challenges do come from.
Okay, all right. So, Kwesi, let me quickly ask you.
Yes.
For the students specifically, where do you think they should ethically draw the line in the use of AI?
I don't think we need to draw any line because AI resources are very helpful. Now students can sit in the comfort of their homes and then ask ChatGPT questions and be able to get answers, right? I think the most important thing is that students should move from just accepting anything from AI, right, as the standard of truth without further investigation, right? So when you submit your papers, for example, when you just put anything in ChatGPT or any other AI related software, it will give you an output. But it is your responsibility to check that the referencing that the AI software is giving you actually do exist, right? You need to check whether they are very credible. You need to check whether it really satisfies the academic board knowledge within what you're operating from. That must be the responsibility of the student and not anyone else. And so I cannot just go online and put in anything and then just put it out and turn it in to anybody as mine knowledge without really investigating to understand that the references that are giving me are factual. Listen, most of the time when students do work in a very rash manner, you realize that, and I don't know, we cannot do a demonstration. When you put anything in AI, it will give you a feedback because it's using a high level knowledge system, right? And so it is up to you as a student to know the materials you are engaging with. And if you have any question, if you have any problem, ask. And that's what I tell my student. Do not, right? Do not proceed to the process of or proceed to the stage of submitting your paper without asking questions. So if you are confused at any point in time, if you're not too sure of anything, ask. And now there are a lot of resources available for students to either clarify or to verify the content they are engaging with. And so that is, for me, the responsibility. I will place it at the onus of the student and then also to the instructors. Instructors giving the clear pathway, giving the clear instructions. This is what I want you to do. In my institution and institutions in the diaspora, for example, professors are very, very vocal about that. They will tell you you can leverage AI resources to do ABC. In this particular instance, you cannot, right? So it's just that blended approach. And once the instruction is clear, it gives students the real way to really use it. But if you do not state anything, you do not state your AI policies in the class, students are tempted to use it. And again, they don't know how to use it, right? And that happens. Finally, I would say that, listen, the knife is a double-edged sword. The blade is a double-edged sword. If you misuse the blade, you can cut your entire fingers off. Are we going to say that students or people shouldn't use the blade? If you misuse the knife, you can chop off your entire fingers. And so I think it is about the conscious approach to really teach people how to use it. It's a conscious approach to help people use it rather than telling students to refrain from it. Whether we like it or yes, AI has come to stay, right? And we need to really get our hands on deck and really understand what are the systems and all of that. Now, people are using that, they're not even going to the traditional school. People are schooling themselves and all, and these are helpful. But I think that the fundamental thing is that if you don't know what you're about, then it becomes a useless tool in your hands.
Thank you so much. I want to see if I can get back Dr. Sharif. Dr. Sharif, are you with us? Okay, no problem. I understand Dr. Sharif has a bit of a technical challenge, so he keeps getting on the call and then he drops off. So kindly forgive us. I know many of us have been waiting to hear from him as well. So Jeremiah, let me continue with you in terms of the workforce alignment. So how would you say that universities should embed employability and entrepreneurial skills into programs without compromising academic integrity?
Coming next.
Did you get the question, please?
Yeah, I did. It looks like the professor you're trying to get is on now.
Okay, one second. Professor Sharif.
I'll be done.
Dr. Sharif, are you with me?
No, I need to go now. I have 6. I want to be back here.
Okay. Okay, then I'm gonna get my
Literally
colleagues
next.
to mute everybody now. Okay. All right. Okay, so Jeremiah, let me continue with you. Sorry for that. So I was asking, how should universities be embedding employability and entrepreneurial skills into programs without compromising their academic integrity? That's the key thing for me.
Okay. Well, first of all, I mean, I'm just thinking, what do we mean when we say academic integrity? because you see, academia must not be seen as an end in itself. Academia must be seen as a means to an end. What is that end? Developing a better society. Developing a better society. We double in knowledge and ideas and information so that we can build a better society. If that's the goal, then embedding employability and entrepreneurship into academia is not a trade-off. It is an enhancement, it's growth, it's advancement. So integration could be done in such a way that we should think of employability not as a single course, like a course that you go and do, say, called employability, but we should embed it across all models through what? Case-based learning. Let's learn through cases. 1, 2, problem-solving assignments. You see, the age in this, you see, one of the things that amuses me about the age of AI, okay, is how it makes nonsense of our current system of education. Because now you can't give a student work to say, list this, explain this. AI can do that easily. AI can do that easily. So let's shift to problem solving. Actual, practical, physical problem solving throughout all modules. Okay, and doing projects that are interdisciplinary. So it's not just a focus on specific or particular domains, but projects that are interdisciplinary, right? Then again, I've said this already, but let me repeat that. Assessment redesign. Let's move beyond exams to portfolios. So somebody is doing a particular course. They should show a portfolio of stuff that they've done in that area. Let's move beyond exams to simulations. People actually trying to do what they do. And then it even gets better. It gets better. Move beyond exams to industry reviewed projects. Because you could, I have a business background, so most of my examples are business bias, forgive me.
Okay.
In a marketing or entrepreneurship class, a lecturer could ask a student a question on how to do a marketing plan. Okay, a marketing plan. And the students will answer the question. But probably they will get the target market part of the plan wrong. And they'll probably get the marketing mix part of the plan wrong. But they may get, say, the value proposition right. They may get, say, the production or operation part right, and all of that. In the school setting, the lecturer or the professor will mark the parts that they got right and then mark the parts that they got wrong. So in the school, assuming that this question is about 20 marks, the students could get about 12 over 20 or 10 over 20. That's more or less a pass mark. The wake-up call is that in academia, you could get 20 or 12. In industry, if you make that kind of error, you may get 0. You may get a loss. So the difference between how academia assesses and how real life assesses is very different. So let's just move beyond just marking parts of a question wrong and part of a question correct to actually asking ourselves, does this thing get results? If somebody has put together a marketing plan or a strategic plan or a business plan, and then there's some parts of it that are correct and some parts of it that are wrong, it's going to impact real life results. Therefore, we must introduce industry reviewed projects. So when the projects are done, it shouldn't just be reviewed by academics. It should be reviewed by industry practitioners, right? And we must move from that to also academic rigor to change a bit. So let's move beyond just theory to application and critical examination, right? So these are some of my thoughts on what we can do to move beyond just theory to doing employment and entrepreneurship.
Okay, all right. Let me engage you again, Jeremiah, quickly on digital economy. So, what would you recommend as specific skills universities should prioritize to prepare graduates for the digital economy in Africa?
I don't have a big answer. I have a very simple answer. So in my experience, dealing with interns, national service persons, students moving from school to workplace, I've noticed that majority of university students do not have a computer or a laptop.
Okay.
Majority, before you we shouldn't even talk about the big issues here. We can talk about big things like data literacy, basic analytics, digital tools, blah, 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 blah. But the primary tool, most university students do not have a laptop or a computer, right?
Yeah.
So if the person doesn't have a laptop or a computer, why are we even talking about digital economy and all of that? Why are we even talking about that? We are far away. So and this is not just a matter for universities, it's a matter for parents as well. If you're a parent, you're a guardian, you're a ward, you have to ensure that your ward has a laptop, because these students who don't have laptops, they're using iPhones. And for most of them, their iPhone can buy a laptop. What have we prioritized? What have we prioritized? Shouldn't we be concerned as academics, as lecturers and professors? We are teaching students who have very advanced phones, but they have no laptops. Right. So for me, I mean, this is my answer. When we get laptops for students in the universities, then we can talk about what the big ideas. But if a student doesn't have a laptop, I have look in my organization, I have hired people or had interns who don't know how to use the internet. They don't know how to use the internet. They don't know how to use MS Word. They don't know how to use PowerPoint. So why should I jump and go and talk about digital tools and cybersecurity and coding and all of those things? No. Those are too advanced. Let's deal with the fundamentals.
Okay, thank you, Jeremiah.
I think I can just add a little.
Yes,
a little
I
to
was just going to
Jeremiah's
ask you
point.
but I know your experience is more of in the US than here, but I want to comment on this.
I mean, I just want to be very measured with my thought on this,
Sure.
and I want to understand and explain the challenge itself. Right, education system across the continent was a very colonized one that was not really designed in a way that really made sustainable development and also meet our needs in terms of societal relevance as a people, because it was designed by colonizers to really meet their standards. It was designed to really make sure that we were advancing their colonial machineries and everything. Now, we've gone through some bit of transformation across the continent, right? There's been a lot of transformation, but we still have a lot of things to do. And I think that Jeremiah points out them clearly. And my philosophical approach is that educational investment is not one-sided. Educational investment is ecosystemic. You need governments playing its role, you need industry playing its role, you need academics playing their role, you need families playing their role, and you need the student playing their role. When you come to Africa as a continent, we leave or we shift blames in a pathway, especially when academia needs to do their bidding, like Jeremiah is saying, then we are leveraging on our weaknesses. When we want government to do what is expected, then we are shifting the blame to industry. For example, I have taught classes in psychology. We've hosted students to mental health facilities that were rejected. Right? We have seen students who have gone to internships and they tell them, we don't have space for you. Do a market survey analysis and find out how many institutions or businesses or industry players across the continent really put in funding or put in a lot of resources for student development. In the Western world, for example, if let's say Apple wants to come up with a very huge innovation, it doesn't come just within a day. It goes through research process, through academia. They design. There's a project coming up in my institution, for example, and there's one big international corporation for the last 10 years, right, have invested billions of dollars in that knowledge economy, trying to make sure that when that product comes out, indeed it has gone through it all. They are training students, they are training researchers, they are training everybody within that ecosystem to make sure that they ensure project efficiency or product efficiency. And so I really want to say that we all need to play our role. What is the role of academia? And he narrated it so beautifully. When it comes to curriculum design, it is not supposed to be only one-sided. And now we've seen a lot of academics who are posting their academic content online. They are posting their syllabus online. They're inviting a lot of practitioners, right, to share their thought and everything. And when students go for internship, the internship report that we get from the industry, okay, faculty members incorporate some of them into their course review. And so there must be that intentional approach. Attending conferences with industry players are very important. How many professors, and working with Association African universities, we had to struggle for universities to release funds for faculty members to go for conferences. And it's through these conferences that you have a lot more of these faculty members engaging with industry players on new designs and new knowledge that exists within the economy. And so I think that we need to be moved to the point, and I think he mentioned that we need to be very collaborative in that process rather than to really say that yes, this is where we are and this is where the challenges are. I always want to move from the deficit framing to a point where we all know our responsibilities. Parents must understand their responsibilities, right? Because if and we see it across all board. When you take medical training, for example, I bet you there is no way that any institution across the continent is operating a medical education or medical degree system where you would say that the student will not use their internship hours usefully because the hospitals understand the value of training those students. The institutions understand that for us to get quality doctors, quality nurses, we need to pay attention to it. They create spaces and all. In my university, for example, I'm just a student, I'm a doctoral student, but the core thing is that I teach, and I do administrative work. And they've created that space within the school system. And so by the time I'm out of the school system, I'm already sharp on all round. But we do not find that resource in the education system. So I think that we all need to play a role to ensure that at the end of the day, we are contributing to holistic development of the student, where student knowledge matches with societal relevance, matches what industry needs, matches what everybody needs, and not operate a siloed ecosystem that at the end of the day we struggle with as a people.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'll just ask this based on what you have just said. When it comes to the instructional design support, what do you think the universities should build internally to make this work?
And in some African universities, and I just want to not even leverage on the Western University, in African universities, some of them have quality assurance unit, where before you design your course syllabus and course materials, it goes through that process to assure quality, right? It goes through that process to assure that the content relates to you're able to spell out what student needs to achieve from that instructional process. You're able to tell what the assignment models are, what examination methods you'll be using within that process. So at the end of the day, it is not just a professor sitting somewhere leveraging on his or her knowledge to create content for the student. So if institutions across the continent do not have quality assurance unit, then that is a very huge gap. In some Western world, it goes even beyond that into teaching learning centers where faculty members, before they are deployed to the classroom, right, to teach, their content, their pedagogical skills, everything is assessed before they go through that process. So I would always recommend that institutions must create some of these centers where they are really checking the quality of the teaching, learning, engagement within the school system. And again, context is very important. And I like the previous panel, I think Chief mentioned it. Context is very important if you are importing any knowledge. Listen, when I was in Ghana studying psychology, right, we're using DSM-7, that is a diagnosis and score model. And when we're talking about patients going through depression, patients going through anxiety and all of that, trust me, you go to the psychiatric hospitals and it will be very difficult for you to understand because a patient in the United States who is exhibiting symptoms of anxiety or depression will not necessarily be the same as someone in Ghana, in Africa, experiencing the same thing. So if you are not using contextual knowledge, we are using economics and other textbooks that are not relatable to our context. Examples are not relatable. I've gone for teaching practice supervision where a very village school in the central region, for example, the teacher was using learning materials that were very foreign. Cauliflower, green vegetables. What happened to okra? What happened to garden eggs, right? So making sure that education is very contextual and relevant to our social economies is very important. And that is where I always advocate for a very strong partnership between industry and academia. And I think the next thing is the faculty development, right? It's huge and very important. As faculty members are deployed into the school system, they must go through periodic training. And that is where I bash university leadership as well. You don't just employ a professor who uses his, and you expect that they will leverage on their 20 years knowledge and experience to teach students who are going to operate in the next generation. It doesn't happen that way. So institutions must set aside. And here in the West, every professor they have their own faculty development funding, right? And it's not as if we can't do that on the continent, but we are not intentional about it. And so professors are doing their research with industry partners. They are presenting their research. Industry partners are critiquing their work. And that is how they're able to advance and create solutions that are existent and relevant to their economy. But we don't. And so you will find professors who are using very old syllables and all of that because there are little funding. And in Ghana, for example, I've seen academics fight over their research allowance to engage and conduct research, and it's a whole misconception of its own because industry players or people who do not really understand the value of that critique that what do you use the money for? But it's very important here. Research base is so I don't know funding is so huge, right? That it's even more than some of the economies of our African countries. So we cannot just be doing little and expect more within our system. If we want that systemic change, then we need a systemic approach to arrest the problem and not deal with them in a silo way. So investing in faculty is very important. Let them go for conferences. Let them engage with scholars across the world. And so how will you be a professor in any African country and still feel limited in collaborating with someone in the West? All right. We need to create all those pathways to make sure that at least our faculty members are getting all the resources that they need. Student is also a very key factor. We don't need to leave them behind. In setting up university ecosystem, we need to make sure that we are creating the resources for them. And Jeremiah mentioned, when you go to some of our universities, and practically some of our colleagues finish 4-year degree without having a laptop or without even having access to a mobile phone. These realities are very deep, and I want us to see how I don't know egregious they are, rather than just watering it. Most universities students do not have access to some of these digital devices, and so if I've never used Excel, if I've never used Microsoft Word, if I've never used PowerPoint to even do any of my academic work, and you just throw me into industry and you expect me to know how to use it, then that is where the challenge is. So all hands on deck. We need to make sure that everybody is playing their role. The resources that we need in the system, we need to do it. Countries that are making intentional investment in education, intentional investment in academia are reaping the result, right? But if we sit in the comfort of our homes and think that, oh, the university should be able to churn out graduates who are fit for purpose, then it will still follow the traditional approaches. So I echo Jeremiah's point. We need that consistent partnership between academia, industry, and government, right? And bring in even people who are just on the market to make sure that we are getting the quality that we need.
Yeah, okay. So before I get back to Jeremiah, let's quickly talk about just because of the way your answers are leading to some of the questions I want to ask. Let's just talk about it straight away. How do you think assessments in online environments differ from traditional approaches to be meaningful and credible?
That question is to me, right?
Yes, for you. Before I go to
Absolutely,
Jeremiah.
yes. And I think that we cannot still be leveraging on asking questions like what is and how is and all of that. We've moved past those things. Those are the basic ways of it, right? So we need to make sure that we are moving into much more project collaborative ways of knowing and ways of teaching. I think assessment must really touch on multiple avenues of the student cognition. It must touch on multiple areas of research. I remember so vividly that Ghana Education Service was mocked for asking, and I don't want to mention the artist's name. They really protected one artist and leveraged their lyrics to teach. And then some people was like, "Oh, we've seen this person in name in an exam paper. We are joking." And I was just sad because if we are not really making sure that we are contextualizing knowledge to what the student know, then we are being abstract. So examination must not be abstract. Assessment must not be abstract. We need to move into a collaborative space where students are solving actual problems. Here in the West, for example, attending classes and asking questions, right, comes with reward. Because in industry real world, you need to go to work. If it is 7, you need to be there. If it is 8, you need to be there. So if classes is at 7 and you come to class at 7 and you do what is required of you, it is 10% of your overall grade. Right. So at the end of the day, the grading system is not that students cram everything, they do rote learning, and at the end of the semester, they come out and pour everything to you. There are a lot of projects that could be broken down. There are a lot of class-based learning project, industry-based learning project, and making sure that at the end of the day, you are assessing the entire learning domains of the student and not just asking them what is and all of that. And jokingly, I say to some of my students here, I mean, African students are very good writers. We hear that comment a lot of the time. And I was just telling them, listen, when I was in primary 5, I was writing exams and they'll tell you 4 or 5 pages. Just write about Islamic religion, 4 or 5 pages. And so you need it tests your ability to write and everything. So I wouldn't discredit the current and the traditional systems of assessment. But what I will just add on is that we need to move a step further, right, into incorporating much more practical based ones. When you look at Ghana's education system and likewise some of the African countries using the CESA initiatives, they are moving to, I think, practical based approaches where students are doing project at primary 5, right? And that project is being assessed. There was a time where students were asked to plant tomato seed, and then they were taken through the entire process. And at the end of the semester, they brought their tomato plant to the class for assessment. And I think that is huge and very important. So I think these are some of the things that we need to incorporate, move from the traditional, I would say move, advance the traditional ways of assessment into a much more collaborative space where assessment and learning, everything touches on social realities.
All right, thank you so much. So, Jeremiah, let me come back to you on your expertise with the workforce alignment. Let me ask this as like a twofold question. Okay, so would you advise that universities keep track of graduate outcomes? If you agree, how effectively should they track their outcomes, and how should this data be used for program improvement?
I mean, I smiled when I heard your question. I absolutely agree. Because really, probably, you know, universities rather think that the grades and class scores of their students is the measuring rule of success. Well, not really. What really is the measuring rule of success is the performance and productivity of your graduates. The productivity and performance of your graduates is a real marking scheme of success. Why? Because they came with trained to become professionals. So the quality of professionals they become is a true measure of the success of the university, right? So you want to be able to track graduate employment rates 6 to 12 months after school. How many graduates of your school have been employed? You want to be able to track career progression over time. What's the career progression? 20 years after university, where are graduates? What have they become? What have they accomplished in the industry? Then you want to find out employer feedback on graduate performance. Employer feedback, the employers who hire graduates, what's their feedback on their performance? Then you want to get feedback on skill relevance and gaps. Like, what skills do they have? Is it relevant? Do they even have skills at all? What are the gaps? You want to be able to track all of those things. Universities must take these things like World Cup. Like, they must be serious about it because that's what's going to show whether really, we are training quality human capital or we are not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, in your expertise, okay, what would you say, or what's your perspective on the role of micro credentials and short courses within traditional university strategies? Because I've seen a lot of these things online, and they are becoming a big deal lately.
Because the challenge is that the focus of these things is not really to revamp the skill set or expand the knowledge base of participants. Even check the marketing the promotions that are done to promote these courses. And end your name with so and so. Become certified for this. So they are running courses. They are running courses in digital marketing, and instead of they promising would-be participants good digital skills after the program, they are saying get certified, get a certificate in this area. And the obsession is certificate, certificate, certificate. Where are the skills?
Mm.
Where are the skills? When a person finishes, what's he going to do with it? What difference? So nowadays you have so many young people with master's degree. When people finish a degree, not long after, they're going to do a master's degree. So many people with master's degree, but they are masters of nothing. Masters of nothing. Because the emphasis, the orientation, the obsession is certificate, 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 not the skills, not competence, not expertise, not becoming better at what you do. So really, the essence of these things are lost. I mean, if a person has a job and they go to do a short course, they're looking for a certificate that will get them a promotion at work, not necessarily skill that will help them improve their productivity or contribution to the employer.
Jeremiah, thank you. I see a lot of passion in the things that you're saying. I see that they sound like a very big deal to you. Anyway, that's why we are on this call. All right. So to finish this session before we go into the Q&A, Kwesi, briefly in a minute, what pedagogical innovations do you believe African universities should prioritize for the future?
That's a very deep one, and I don't want to be very prescriptive about that. But I think that blended learning approaches are very important. One of the things that I talk about is when COVID happened, we African universities really learned a lot and we advanced a lot. In my class, for example, some of us were talking about, I was sharing with people, we used WhatsApp to communicate and to teach. And they're like, what? How was that possible? I was like, yeah, we did it. We used Telegram and all these things. But at the end of the day, when we moved past the lockdown and everything, we threw all those innovations behind, right? And so we need to leverage on some of these existing platforms and to develop African-based ones. You remember the time where internet was shut down globally? You remember the time where, and I always say the day that Google shuts down in Africa, we are all going back into the darkness because we have consistently over the years leveraged on these international platforms for our survival, right? And so how are we incorporating our own knowledge? How are we retooling and upskilling our student in all this engineering and all of that to come up with blended learning platforms? And some of them are existing, right? That are tailored to our student needs. So we must continue using the blended learning learning platforms, which is very important. I think that pedagogical innovations that I would also recommend is one that is much more community engaged and problem-based learning. And we need to really be very conscious about that. And academic programs that leverage that. Look, we have a lot of academic programs on the continent that use that in the medical field, in the law field, and all of that. There are a few fields that are not much more intentional about it, and those who use it can testify the relevance and the quality of their students. I don't think anybody will get up and say that, oh, we don't have quality lawyers in Africa, or we don't have quality business people in Africa, or we don't have. Always it's to a specific group of professional, and it goes back to their training, right? So we need to make sure that we are promoting community engaged learning process. As a people, our African culture and values are much more collective, right? So how do we leverage? And there's a proverb that two heads are better than one. I mean, like two good heads are better than one, right? So we need to move from that individualized approach to make quizzing students and all of that to an approach that is much more collaborative and it supports students from solving real world problems. The next one that is very crucial to me, and I think that Chief and the other speaker mentioned it, making sure that we just address the digital divide across the continent. And I think we've also shared that as well. Most students do not have laptops, most students do not have devices. But then in African universities, most students will have mobile phones. So how do we leverage on what they have to really upscale that into an educational advancement? So if you are devising any learning strategies, learning innovation in an online field, make sure that the UI interface of whatever you're using, students can still access it on their phone, even when they are just on the top of a mango tree. They should still be able to access them as well. And then moving from a very colonized approaches to a decolonized one, setting locally relevant examples to students, making sure that they're able to engage with content that is very relevant. Last week, for example, I read in a news article that Ghana is one of the leading countries in the world that has trained chartered accountant. And I was like, oh wow, but yes, we still have corruption or just eating us out everywhere. Right. So how are we making sure that whatever we are studying, the auditors and everything, right? We are being truthful. So ethical standards is very important, making sure that everything that we are putting out is much more, it frames our experience. And lastly is the use of AI. And I will echo it multiple times. Let's really come up with an AI policy, AI frameworks for us as a people, and not just even leverage on AI on its own. Just recently, I was adjudicating an African student who has been chastised for using AI in their work. And I had to prove to the professor that, listen, we started studying and speaking English language that AI flags right now. So, for example, Americans will just use sidewalk, but Africans and those who use the British school system will use pavement.
Pavement, yeah.
And AI will flag pavement as an AI-induced word. And there are certain words that we grew up using in our writing and everything, it flags them. So these are using Western models, right? Basically American Western models that flags other knowledge systems as deficient. And so we need to be very much conscious about how we are contextualizing AI usage for our people and making sure that we just talk about it, frame it in a way that is useful to them. And I think these are the innovations that we need to survive in this century. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kwesi Akwasam and then Jeremiah Boabeng. We want to quickly get into the Q&A session. We just have limited time now because we have to quickly do a short presentation before we get off this call. So if you have a question, this is the right time to show by hand, and then we can call you and then you unmute yourself and then you can ask your questions quickly. If we can do that within the next 5 minutes, we'll be glad. Any questions from all of the participants on the call so far? Any questions? I will check in the chats field as well to see if there are any questions there. But in the meantime, you can show by hand and then. Okay, I see Sir. Yeah, Sir Brian, your hand has been up for a while now. Can you go ahead and unmute and ask your question, please? Hello, Sir Brian, can you hear me? Okay, I see Ibrahim showing on video trying to put his hand up. Ibrahim, can you go ahead and ask your question? Ibrahim, do you have a question? Ibrahim, can you hear me? Okay, what about Sir Brian? Because your hand is still up. If you do not have a question, then we can gladly wrap up on this session and then we can go into the last segment and then we can get off the call.
I think there are questions in the chat as well.
Yes. Because if you have identified them and if you think anyone goes for you, you can easily look at it and then just answer.
Yeah, okay, let me see.
Yeah, I'm looking through as well. Okay, so I see a comment from Adam and it says, would you say, Jeremiah, that simulations, project-based forms of assessment replace the traditional end of semester exams, or possibly the former is considered a credit for the student, even if she trails in the traditional end of semester exams? Or would you also say there should be a balance in the both? I think this question is for Jeremiah. Yeah.
And I would say that I actually think that we should consider a 60-40, where 60 is for practicals and 40 is for theory. Because yes, understanding the theory is important, but being able to apply it is more important.
I'm sure AI will flag that word for you. More important, that phrase. Right. Thank you so much, Jeremiah. Okay. Tabang Moleko has a question. Yeah, I think his hand is up. So Tabang, kindly unmute and then just quickly ask your question and then we can move on.
Thank you so much, colleagues. I really appreciate the presentation. But, you know, we sit here discussing now things like large language models, Generation P transformers. Yes, the practical application on them is extremely useful, but you know, you have to go back to the foundational frameworks that came from, I remember it was like We're in a Better World. I think there's a paper that they came out with, Google came out with in 2017 on this, and that was a heavy conceptual framework. And, you know, so we need to, we need not to pedagogue ourselves back into vocational schools. I will fight that extremely strongly because these emanate from serious concepts that, yes, I think the discussion is around how do we practicalize these concepts? How do we bring them to the ground? But we can't negate the need for us to be engaging in extreme large language models and understanding those concepts. I mean, a main example now, China. China is trying to figure out how do they build a chip industry. They've got all the money in the world.
Yeah.
They've got all the money in the world, but they have to now say, how do they bridge that gap of both the knowledge and the practical? I think silicon chips are a good example, where it's a very strong combination of both. Very high theoretical concepts and also very practical application to build an industry that takes you back into AI. So I think I don't want us to be going back to the notion of a vocational school. I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. We are going back to what you were saying, Kwesi, when we went back to colonial schools. You know, where we were hewers of water and tillers of soil. That's not what we want to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tabang. Thank you so,
and I think
so,
there's
so
a
much.
question. I think it's a statement. We need to build contextual, regional, relevant curriculum.
Yeah.
Listen, they are existing. Anyone on this platform who has never read the Continental Education Strategy for Africa, CESA 2025, 2015-2025, must read that document. And it tells us what we need. There are a lot of continental strategies. We have the STISA and all of that. And these are very brilliant document that really frames how curriculum and teaching and learning must be framed within our context. There are a lot of that. I think I may not be able to mention the rest, but these things exist. I can share those policies with us. And that's a very good point. We need to make sure that we are harmonizing the education system and all of that as a continent. We need to make sure that we are declassifying, distinguishing between degrees and all of that, ensuring academic mobility and all. For example, it's so difficult for someone in Ghana reading, let's say, I did psychology, so I'll use mine as an example, like reading in my second year of psychology. If we move to University of Ghana from University of Cape Coast, to do a second semester as part of their curriculum as well. It will be very difficult for me to transfer that back to my educational system in the University of Cape Coast. And I don't know how that is, right? Difficult. So we need a lot of intentionality in the way that we kind of function our education content and then curriculum. They are existing. It's just that most of us do not know about it, or we are not using it, and we're still using the existing things that we are familiar with.
Right. Thank you so much. There's a question here for us. Is from one of our former speakers. He says, that's from Chief. So he says, we see a lot of government-sponsored workforce or job training initiatives existing outside of academia. Is there a reason why these vocational grants division initiatives cannot be channeled through university programs?
Yeah, I think it still goes down to some of the deficit conversations that we always have, right? And most of the time, I think Africans, we are best at describing the problem rather than finding the solution. And so anytime we see a problem, we create a solution that creates another problem, right? And it goes in that cyclical manner. And so, for example, some of these training initiatives exist because of the conversation around the fact that, oh, the graduates we are churning out of our school systems are not fit for purpose. They are not fit for industry. Therefore, let's create some of these courses and training programs to advance them. I, as a person, do not really go against professional development. Listen, professional development is a longitudinal aspect of everybody, lifelong learning. So you may go to school to study something, right? I study psychology. There are some of the psychological principles, there are a lot of some of the theories that we used in my days. We don't use them in the field right now today. And how are we making sure that? So imagine a professor who used DSM-5 to teach their student in 1999 is still using that same thing to teach students in 2001, whilst we are at DSM-7 and even moving to 8 possibly. So there are a lot of innovations that will come into the school system that are existing in the real world. And there is no synergy. And that is what creates some of these things. And I think that we need to go back to the source and go back to the root. And that is what myself and Jeremiah will be echoing. That consistent and constant partnership needs to be there. Instead of creating those training programs, why don't you review the curriculum within the school systems to make sure that it really fit for purpose and is churning out the graduates who are fit for it? This must be separated from professional development. Professional development is different, and I think I echo and I recommend that to everybody, no matter your line of work. Consistently, you must learn, and that is how you become better.
Thank you very much, Kwesi Akwasam and Jeremiah Boaben. Thank you so much for digesting this second part of the panel discussion on this program. We are very, very grateful for your insights and your contributions and for everything that you have said to us. And we pray and hope that we can be able to do better for ourselves as a continent. So I would appreciate, I'd rather end this session at the moment and then move on to the next one, which is the case study spotlight. And we are looking at African solutions for African challenges. And we are looking at 3 institutions here, Rhodes Business School, I think that's in South Africa. And then we are looking at Academic City University in Ghana, and then again, University of Education, Winneba, also in Ghana. So I'm going to invite Thabang Moleko from Rhodes Business School in South Africa. Thabang, you have 5 minutes to do your case study spotlight presentation, and then we'll move on to the other institutions, and then we can do the question and answers on this segment. This is the last segment before we get off this call. So Thabang, let's hear you.
Can you see my slides? Are they appearing?
Yes, sir. We can see that.
Oh, goodness. I'm an academic at heart. I'm back to slides. I think for us, we've taken an approach to sort of say, what do we mean by leadership in Africa? And that talks to what we say is a framework we use that we call the knowledge wheel. And what it basically says is that there are challenges around social, economic, equity, ethics issues, right? And they create issues around what do you do there within your ecological system, your social system, your economic system, your knowledge system, and the human systems. And we're saying it's a complex mishmash that, you will operate and work around in there. Recognizing, we love South Africa for what it's teaching us around, you can have an economy that's got money, but you have to have equity. And we're not getting that right yet. Also, then we have a challenge around ethics. Do we have ethical leaders that are able to prove to us what they need to do? And of course, we can't then leave the world worse off than when we found it. So that is the 4 E's in a nutshell. So what we did, we had to do a training program called the Entrepreneurship Technical and Empowerment Program. So it was an initiative we did with Bowie State. I see Kwesi there. So he knows Bowie. It's right next door to Maryland. So he knows that well.
Yes.
It's Bui State, and we were working with the United States Mission when they were giving funds at the time. We were working with the biggest financial services partner in crypto called Circle. Worked with the government department with us called the Eastern Cape Department of Social Development. So these were all the layers of partners that we had. And the idea was, how do we design a curriculum that talks to the digital age and putting the 4E into implementation? So these are just some shots. That's us there in Bowie, having an international day where I presented some papers there. But I think what we spoke of that was the main issue, and we discovered this that was quite interesting. When I looked at my course content and the corresponding professor's course content, we'd all come to the same point. He was using customer empathy maps. I was using customer empathy maps. He was using the customer journey. I was using the customer journey map. He was using the business model canvas. I was using the business model canvas. So we quickly picked up that knowledge is actually synergistic. And it's quite interesting because when we did this, AI wasn't quite out there yet, right? We were discussing, no, we were cutting edge. We were doing crypto, blockchain, fintech. So we were there. I think it was one of the first blockchain local digital skills course that we did. So what we then found, and this is the experiences. So we worked with co-ops. You see the guys there in the masks and trying to do. So they had cooperatives here in Grahamstown under the Department of Social Development. And our students had to then apply both knowledge from the Bowie State students and the UN and the students in South Africa to get going. And of course, there was knowledge exchange. I'm just showing you my students there at the tower, going to the Liberty Walk there in Washington. That's us. The other shot there is us there of the ambassador. And we were just outlining this exchange program and how powerful it is and what we needed to do in terms of it. Because we had a partner like Circle, we were invitees to what they call the DC FinTech Week, which is one of the strongest collaborations of crypto. How do we deliver this? So during the term, it was online within the both the universities. So we had a delivery platform, an online delivery platform, video platform. You're delivering online, and then it's hybrid. My class was physically there. The US class wasn't there, but we're delivering with them. But every 6 months, there's a crossover where a group of 6 US students comes across, or a group of 6 SA students or 8 SA students go across to the US, so that we start to then share the practical experiences. And at the same time, they're meeting co-ops in South Africa. We never got a chance to meet social entrepreneurs in the US yet, but it was an interesting experience for us in that I can safely say, good colleagues, our skills base and our knowledge is fine. We are actually quite relevant and quite there. Challenge, and I think it's where we're sitting now. How do I sustain this even before Trump decided to pull the funding? How do I sustain a program like this in Africa now? And it's something that I'm grappling with about how do I find now that level of funding to be able to do this, because it was both a student exchange and a staff exchange to work with that. So I thank you for that runway presentation.
Thank you very much, Thavan, for making it very snappy. I saw that your slides were many. There was a lot embedded in there, but you managed to make it very brief for us. Thank you so much. So when we come to the Q&A, I'm sure anybody that has questions will ask you. But for now, we want to move on to the next presenters. We'll finish all the presenters, then we can ask all the questions together in the same session. So the next presentation will be done by Dr. Sena Abuja and then Dr. Siraj Mohammed from Academic City University in Ghana. So can we have you, Dr. Sena and Dr. Siraj, if you're ready, please?
Yes, please, we are. And
Thank you so
hello
much.
to everyone. So Dr. Siraj will share his screen and then go ahead and do the presentation, and then we'll both take questions after.
That's right. Thank you.
And while he does that, just to sort of set the ball rolling. So we looked at it from where the institution as a whole is taking e-learning and what our e-learning strategy has been as an institution and where we are currently, the challenges we are facing and how we can improve that. So Dr. Siraj, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Please, am I audible on the call?
Yes, you are loud and clear.
Okay, and you can see my screen as well, right?
Yes, we can.
Also, so just like you said, Mr. Moderator, we have a lot of slides, but we want to spare members and make me snappy as much as possible. And so thank you very much, Dr. Sena, who's the VP Academics as well. Yeah, so we were trying to look at the e-learning platform that we use in the university. So we had a couple of slides, but I'll summarize it because you have the visuals. I think that will help. And so about 22 slides, but I'm supposed to do this within 10 minutes. So let's see. Okay, so those of you who know Academicity, you know we have an amazing learning pillars. And interestingly enough, and that is even what is going to help me to be snappy with this presentation. Most of the things that I'm even going to say has been discussed and in detail. At a point, I was even wondering whether Jeremiah and Ezekwesi were actually faculty members at Academicity, because most of the things that they were saying, and they were saying with passion and all that, are things that Academicity we've taken and we've been intentional about making sure that they have been addressed. If we just do a simple Google on Academicity learning pillars, which I will humbly request that we all do, you'll see we have experiential learning as one of our learning pillars, which is what we've captured here, and I want to emphasize with this presentation. We do have contextual learning, which is what we were talking about, making sure our content is contextualized and it actually addresses our problems. We have extensional learning, which is making sure the students actually adapt to the real world. When beyond the classroom, beyond the school, can you really face real world challenges? Can you do that? That is part of it. And then unified learning, which has to do with making sure you have interdisciplinary, multi-departmental learning and all that. Can you bring entrepreneurship together with engineering? Can you bring computer science and let's say robotics and let them do something that is meaningful and all that? So that is our learning pillar. And so when we come to e-learning, we don't spare that at all as far as our e-learning philosophy is concerned. We take a blended first approach, which is exactly what members were talking about deeply, and meaning that we do use traditional platform so that when the internet breaks, like was rightly discussed, you still survive and still have the advantages of that. You all agree with me that everything has a pros and cons, and the traditional system has its own pros that you don't want to lose as far as your delivery and your education and training is concerned. And also, e-learning has its own pros also, which helps you to be able to deliver content on scale, regardless of where people are located, and even making sure people are doing it so efficiently and all that. So the blended first approach is based on that. And so we focus more on experiential learning, industry relevance, and we don't joke with that. Our curriculum are actually built with industry experts, and it's a core requirement in everything we do at Academicity University. We make sure anytime we are doing a curriculum review, we have industry experts to take a second look at our content and see whether it's industry relevant and it meets their expectations and all that. So that's what we do. So, so yes, we have undergraduate and postgraduate programs where we make sure that we have a feel of this e-learning and online approach to them. And we do have an online, of course, e-learning platform. Here we call it COSI. It's a model-based learning management platform, which is meant to do content delivery, assessment, discussion forums, grade tracking, and all that. And obviously supports asynchronous learning to make sure that students will be able to engage with the content and learning materials, even outside the classroom when their lectures are not available on their own. Continuous engagement, making sure students are always engaged and always learning, and structured course delivery. So, like I said, of course, these are everyday things that I know every person on the call knows that learning management systems provide. And so we've also been intentional about making sure that we get this kind of benefits from our learning management platform, digital assignment, online assessment, and all that. But one of the things that I want to say, even though it's ahead of me in the slides, is that we don't just use the online platform just to deliver and train or engage students, but also to be able to have an early warning kind of risk management approach where we are able to identify students who are not doing so well in the course of the semester before the assessments are taken. And again, here we do take assessment in certain, and we even prefer project-based assessment, and that's what we do in the semester exams. Students actually engage and they produce project-based assessments for their courses. And so before we do all that, we make sure that we are able to track those who are not doing so well. And technology brings that to bear, and we take full advantage of that, and which is something that we want to encourage members on the call to be able to also do in their universities. As far as academic support systems are concerned, we do have dedicated maths, programming, and resource center where we are very intentional about how we engage students and to make sure that they actually we bring them up to speed, because we do realize the challenge that we have in Africa, in Ghana and Africa at large, where people come to universities and they lack basic programming skills, which is something that if you go in other developed countries, students even from the primary or even nursery know how to do or understand basic programming skills. So we do have those kind of supports, learning, writing, and all that, and we integrate all this in our learning platforms. AI enabled, yeah, we are also very open to AI, and this has also been discussed. Like I said, we are not close. We at Academics, we believe in innovation, we believe in the dynamics of education, and we believe, and we also know and appreciate the fact that learning is not static, it's very dynamic, and things change as we move on. The way we used to learn maybe 100 or 200 years ago has completely changed. If you compare, you see the differences. And now we are the AI age. What can we do to leverage on? Somebody made an example with the calculator era and all that. So the same thing. But of course, in a university, you want to do responsible AI. You want to make sure you have policy governing all these things. And that is what we are also mindful of. And this is the early risk detection system that I talked about. E-learning matters at academy, of course, making faculty very efficient in what they do and all that. Nothing comes without a challenge. We do appreciate that. And as far as institutional challenges are concerned, cultural and adoption by new people who are new to the system is a challenge. People also working on how to make the content available on the e-learning platform is a challenge. And the utilization of the system because of technical know-how and difficulty in doing that technically. These are challenges that obviously you face in the university, and we try to surmount them as we move on. Continental challenges, we've talked about this, so which is also very obvious. I think the first panel, somebody mentioned internet reliability, data costs, and all that. These are challenges that impedes the progress of e-learning and all that. And then finally, we do have some recommendations, policy we commend. And again, members on the call, I was listening through the panel discussions, and obviously, it was mentioned that we need policy governing e-learning strategies and all that, and of course, AI. And whilst we do that, our regulators, GTech to be specific, must be considered, and we need to have them in mind. At the university level, we need to invest heavily. And I think this was also mentioned where responsibility must be shared across all stakeholders, parents, government, institutions, the students, and all that, and even the faculty. Everybody needs to be on board for us to have a successful e-learning platform. Technical support from the technical guys, the IT guys, making sure that the tools can be integrated in the system, utilization, checking, support, and all that must be on point. And of course, with the teaching faculty, they need to develop. And this was also mentioned, so I will not belabor the point. We need to really develop each other. We need to constantly learn and adapt to new changes. And this is something that is very difficult for some lecturers who have not gone through a system like ours and come from a traditional system, and you introduce tools like this to them, and it becomes a challenge they find it difficult to adopt, and you need to really invest much in them to make sure that the students also, of course, need to start buying laptops, which also what Jeremiah was saying with fashion, and stop only depending on the iPhones and all that, right? Of course, the iPhones are good, but you need a laptop to have to do some practical projects and all that. And of course, they need to know the responsible use of AI and all that. Yeah, so concluding remarks, this is what academics will be looking forward. Try to be a smart city, have a simulation teaching environment, online, AI-enabled learning, and all that, reduce reliance on handwritten assessments, but just to save paper and also be innovative and scale, improve outcomes, feedback, engagement, and all that. Yes, so my concluding remarks or message is that at Academicity, e-learning is not just an add-on, it's very intentional and evolves, and it's an evolving ecosystem that combines technology, pedagogy, and human connection to deliver meaningful and future-ready education. Thank you very much. That was 22 slides, done I don't know how many minutes.
that was very smart, Shiraj. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we'll quickly move on to from the University of Education, Winneba. He will do that for University of Education. Then after that, we'll take all the questions. So Professor Jonas, you have the floor. Can you hear me?
Thank you, Philemon. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear, sir.
Okay, let me share my slide. Good afternoon, colleagues. Philemon.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm grateful for this opportunity for this important summit. But if you check the participants, it has reduced from 107 to about 47 now. I don't know what might have caused that.
There are other people who are not on, you don't see on your screen as well. So
okay,
that's about over 40 people. So yeah.
Okay.
So we still have the numbers, but I agree there are some that have dropped too, but we still have the numbers. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm the Director for Programs and Innovation at the College for Distance and eLearning at the University of Education, Winneba. So in this presentation, I'm going to showcase UW e-learning adoption, then e-learning approaches, the challenges, then the way forward. So with the adoption, the awareness segment is profound. All faculty members and students are aware of e-learning technologies in UW. Then with the interest, the institution normally explore the benefits and possibilities of e-learning technologies. And we normally also assess the feasibility and other kind of cost elements in terms of infrastructure development. In partnership with FIA, that is Partnership for Higher Education in Africa, there was a pilot study that showcased the adoption of e-learning technologies in UW. With the full implementation, e-learning has become an integral part of our teaching and learning processes. So I'll move to the approaches that we are employing within the landscape. At the micro level, facilitators use Telegram, WhatsApp, and other common digital platforms to share their materials, both at the regular and the distance mode, and even with the sandwich mode. So at the micro level, that's what we are doing. Then at the meso level, the university acquired Zoom. So faculty members are encouraged to use Zoom in order to be able to have live lessons for students. At the macro level, we are using learning management system, and for the regular mode, we call it a V class. Then at the distance mode, we call it codel courseware. So materials are chunked into the learning management system. And it is model that we are using to do that, so that learners can interact with their instructors, and some lecturers have their assessment on the model platform. It is at the distance level that we are trying to do the same. For now, at the distance level, we just have the text-based courseware. That is, all the course models have been converted into text-based for our learners to be able to download. So these are some sample logs. Then also at the macro level, we have, for general courses, we have lecturers having live presentations, and our radio station, which is called Radio Windy Bay, stream it live. Students can access the live sections on Facebook and also via our YouTube channels. Some challenges. Most of our, or some of our faculty members, they are not able to go by our learning management system, and also lack of motivation. We have technical people who normally develop the content,